The story begins with the protagonist hearing someone calling him in a displeased voice and telling him that the lady of the Xiao family is already waiting at the door. Tio sat on the sofa and looked ahead. He was dressed in a servant's costume. The old man asked the boy very discontentedly, "Has he really gone completely deaf?" Chiang looked at his body and noticed that he was wearing a stupid suit. There was an old man named Linghu Xiang standing to the side. He was the CEO of Linghu Company. He asked the guy to come out and greet the guest. The system informed the owner that he had just been attacked by his own grandfather. The system told the owner that he was now in the world of the novel Crazy Marriage on the 35th chapter. Chang was the antagonist of Linghu Khan. He had 5 chapters left before he would go offline. The main goal of the protagonist was to survive. Chiang told himself that for him to survive for 5 chapters would be generous or even cruel. Chiang swung his hand and hit the guy on the head with all his might. The old man demanded that the boy go to the door and meet Miss Xiao. The boy got up from the sofa and told his grandfather that he understood everything. The girl waved her hand at Mr. Linghu and greeted him. The boy greeted her back. Chiang thought about it. He couldn't remember how much time had passed since he entered the book world. The main character closed his eyes and plunged into memories. He remembered that it all started with a disaster. On a city street, the walls of buildings began to shake due to a strong earthquake. Due to a powerful earthquake, the walls began to crack and collapse. A huge sign on the wall of a building fell down due to the earthquake. The voice from the system told the guy that he was connected to the Villain Rebellion program. Since then, he began to travel through different novels. The guy has to play the role of the dying antagonist. After that, he has to stay alive. The ultimate goal is to return with enough rewards. Xian had many successes, but there were more failures. He met the main character, who had cheating abilities. The player laughed and launched a large projectile from his hand at his opponent. The guy put his hand forward and tried to defend himself. An explosion was heard near her. The fighter waved his arms in all directions and tried to defend himself from the projectiles flying at him. He shouted at his opponent that he couldn't just hit him. The guy in the soldier's uniform looked at his opponent and said to Tico that the king catches shells with his bare hands. The soldier looked ahead and shouted angrily that he had to stop. There was a very strong and powerful explosion, and the guy turned around in fear. The warrior pierced his opponent with his sword at the edge of the hill. The protagonist thought that sometimes you can encounter an incomparable immortal who pierces the heart without a word. The protagonist closed his eyes. He realized that something had to change this time. The system informed the owner that the synchronization of the entire novel was complete. He had to try his best. Chang stood near the entrance of the hotel. There were other guards nearby. Chang looked ahead carefully. He thought that the novel should reach the part where the main character kidnaps the bride. At this time, the car door opened and a girl got out of it. The guy extended his hand to the side and helped his girlfriend out of the car. Xiao Churan got out of the car. She was the eldest daughter of the Xiao family. Zhang Beixuan stood next to her. He was the main character in the novel about a crazy marriage. Zhang walked with his girlfriend and looked ahead carefully. The main character looked in front of him and felt as if he was very strong. Qian told the girl to go ahead. He offered to help her with her bag. The protagonist remembered that he was the youngest son of the Linghu family named Han. The guy was holding flowers in his hands. He said to the girl in a joyful voice that he was happy and free and could fly. Xiao answered her companion with displeasure that he was sick. The protagonist turned to the side and noticed Zhang Beixuan, who was the Dragon King of Sand City, next to him. Now Zhang's main role was to remain Xiao Churan's bodyguard. Tio said in an important voice that the bodyguard was always at the right time and place. The protagonist thought that Zhang was the unshakable core in this novel. Chiang felt that Zhang was an absolute leader with all the necessary qualities. The main character looked at the guy in front of him and realized that he didn't particularly like him. Xiao turned to her friend and asked him to help her with her bag. The protagonist looked after the girl as she left. He devoted himself to her with all his heart and used all his resources to help the Xiao family. But in the girl's heart, only Zhang lived. There were still 5 chapters left in the book. This might not be enough to change the relationship between Xiao and Zhang. This novel was aimed at men, where the main character can get all the women. The book is doomed to have an unfortunate ending. Need to wait for the next book. The main character thought to himself that he could be beaten to death, but he would endure it out loud. He told the girl that he wanted to tell her something. Xiao froze and stopped. She decided to turn to the guy herself. The girl turned around and answered the main character that she also wanted to tell him something. The main character told her that she could speak. He already guessed what the girl would tell him. Xiao explained to the guy that she would never agree to this engagement. Xiao explained to her companion that she would not agree even if his family offered something to her father. Chang calmly answered the girl that he would not agree either. The girl told the main character that she wouldn't go with someone like him. Xiao was suddenly very surprised. She looked at the guy in front of her with fear. Tiang told her that he wanted to call off the engagement. The girl was very surprised when she heard such words from the main character. Zhang looked angrily at the guy and asked what kind of plot he was plotting. Xiao asked her companion very displeasedly what he had planned. Xiao pointed her finger at the protagonist and said that she didn't believe him. The protagonist, with great excitement, gestured to his companions to stop. Qian explained to the girl in a calm voice that he, of course, had nothing in mind. Xiao told the guy that she had already seen enough and he wouldn't be able to fool her. Chang glanced at his girlfriend and thought with displeasure that she wanted to become part of Zhang's harem, while he was here playing the role of a faithful dog. Chang thought to himself with displeasure that he had overflowed in his knowledge. He decided that the stupid girl would be slammed by the door when she left. Xiao looked around in great surprise. She didn't understand who told her this. Xiao looked around with displeasure. She didn't understand who could call her stupid. The main character told the dissatisfied Xiao not to imagine too much. Qin explained to the girl that they would tell their elders that they did not want the engagement under any circumstances. Zhang looked at the protagonist very angrily and said nothing to him. Chang turned around and walked away abruptly. The system informed the owner that he had an error in the data transmission interface. His thoughts could be transmitted to the characters in the book. The protagonist realized that he couldn't report an error in the system, otherwise he would have been formatted. The system informed the owner that it had fixed the error. Now only his complaints and curses will be captured. Chiang thought about it. He remembered that, according to the content of the novel, he insulted Zhang because he kidnapped his woman. All this led to a sad outcome. The protagonist happily decided that he would not get engaged to Xiao Churan, and therefore Zhang would not attack him. Tio said to himself very happily that it would be no problem for him to survive the 5 chapters. The main character approached the door. He told his companions that they had already arrived. Xiao told her friend not to go inside with her while he waited for her. Zhang watched his girlfriend with great interest and excitement. Xiao could not forget what she heard from the main character. Chiang was surprised that the girl asked Zhang to wait for her outside. The protagonist turned around and noticed with surprise that Zhang did not look angry. The main character entered the room and addressed the old man. The grandfather was sitting on the sofa. Chang pointed to the girl and told the old man that he had brought Lady Xiao with him. The old man greeted the guests. He told the boy that he could call the girl simply Charan. The grandfather turned to the main character and told him to pour a drink for Charan. Xiao said in his mind that he couldn't afford to take in the #1 beauty in the city. He needed the girl to break off the engagement so that he could end this affair. Xiao turned to the side. She realized that she heard Ling Wuhan's voice. The girl thought that she could tolerate the guy's insult. She did not understand why he decided that she was in the Bexwan's harem. Chang told his mistress that she had nothing to fear even if 10 more people came to them now. The girl thought that Zhang was her bodyguard. He saved her once, and she trusted him. The main character came up and brought the girl a glass of tea. Xiao couldn't understand what the harem had to do with it. She decided that someone was spreading rumors here. The old man looked away in surprise. He did not understand why people were so reserved. Xiao jumped up from her chair abruptly. She shouted that she did not agree. The girl explained to her grandfather that she felt nothing towards Lin Huhan. She wanted to get engaged to the one she truly loved. The main character raised his finger and said that coercion will not lead to anything good. The engagement needs to be called off. Xiao turned around in surprise. She couldn't believe that the guy was serious about all this. The man approached the main character and said that he and the girl would definitely get married. Tio said that Madame Xiao was fully grown up. He had admired her maturity and prudence since he was a child. The guy told the man that Charan refused to marry him. Xiao shouted in a frightened voice that he definitely would not marry the girl. Xiao didn't understand why the guy's character had changed so much. He wrote her a 5,000-word essay yesterday. The man looked at the boy and asked if he wanted to stay on the Churan side without any formalities. Qian extended his hand to the man and said that he really understood things from a business perspective. The man approached the girl and told her that this union must take place. The main character fell to his knees in front of the man and said that the marriage needed to be called off. Xiu mentally demanded that the girl definitely refuse to marry. Xiu looked at the main character very thoughtfully and with interest. The girl suddenly extended her hand to the main character and said that she understood everything. Xiao looked slyly at the guy and said that she understood where the talk about her not wanting to get married came from. The girl looked at the guy very slyly and said that he had changed his mind. Xiao let go of the guy's clothes and said that feelings can be created if they don't exist. The girl looked slyly at the man and said that she agreed to this marriage. The main character was very shocked by the girl's words. He felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Qiang told the girl in his mind that she was in the last stage of debility. Out loud, he advised Xiao not to force herself. The main character thought that he wanted to hit his girlfriend so that sparks would fly from her eyes. He explained out loud that all this was the will of her parents and matchmakers. Chang put her hand on the guy's shoulder and asked, "Does he really not like her anymore?" The protagonist replied that of course he likes her. The main character looked angrily at the girl and thought that he would like to smash her head in. Xiu looked at her friend with interest and thought that he was very dramatic. The girl thought slyly to herself that the main character should obey her. She said to herself that for her, all of this was inexplicably tempting. Chang grabbed her hand and led her along. The main character led his girlfriend by the hand and said that they needed to talk. Tio said, without turning around to his uncle and grandfather, that they would go away for a while. The old man said to the young people with a smile that they could go. The man said to the boy and the girl that they could communicate more in private. The main character quickly went into the next room. He asked the girl, "What was all that?" Chang turned around and told his friend that it was not too late to cancel the engagement. Xiao asked her companion why she should cancel. The girl explained to the guy that this union was arranged by their families. She should not refuse. Chang reminded that she herself said that she wanted to marry only the one she would love. Xia reminded the girl with excitement that she had always treated him with contempt. The girlfriend thought about it. She said that she doesn't like anyone now, but after the wedding, everything can change. The main character got scared. He mentally screamed at the girl that if she starts to like him, then he is finished. Zhang will not let him go. The girl couldn't understand why the main character kept remembering Zhang Beishuan. Xiu knew that her friend was the young master of one of the 4 great families. She herself did not understand why he was afraid of some bodyguard. The main character extended his hand to the wall next to the girl. He angrily asked her if she refused. Xia replied that she would not refuse. She angrily asked the guy, "What will he do with all this?" Upset. Chiang was in the banquet hall. There were many guests there. The guy realized that he could not do anything about it. One man raised his glass of wine and shouted that they needed to celebrate the engagement of the young couple. The guests happily began to congratulate the guy and the girl. Xiao and Qian stood on the stage. One girl told her friend that the unification of the Linghu and Xiao families was a frightening alliance. Zhang stood and listened carefully. Someone said that there were rumors that the girl, Xiao, did not like the guy Linghu. The security guard stood to the side with a glass in his hand. He looked angrily at the girl. The guy got angry. He squeezed his hand with all his might and the glass shattered into pieces. Zhang said to the man in a very angry voice that he objected. Uncle Xiao looked questioningly at the guard and asked who he was. Zhang looked slyly at the man and told him to take a good look at him. Uncle Xiao looked at the guy with great interest. He kept remembering who was in front of him. People in the crowd whispered with interest. They wanted to know what kind of guy was standing in front of Uncle Xiao. After a short pause, the man happily told the guy that he was his daughter's bodyguard. The uncle looked at the guy and asked, why did he decide to speak out? The people around were surprised. They could not understand how the bodyguard could oppose the engagement of the young lady. The main character was unhappy. He realized that the guests around him were adding fuel to the fire. The man angrily told the security guard that he was fired. He advised the guy to eat well, since from now on he would only be cleaning shoes. Zhang smiled maliciously to himself. He told the man that he spoke out because of his daughter. The guard asked the man, has he really decided that his daughter's marriage depends on him? Xiao looked at her friend and realized that he was a very arrogant idiot. The man on stage angrily said that he had no desire to talk to the fired bodyguard. He demanded that someone take the guy away from here. Zhang looked around and noticed 2 guards approaching him. The guy stretched his arms and said that 10 people needed to be sent against him. The man told the boy that everything would be as he wished. More guards appeared from the side. One of the fighters ran at full speed to attack Zhang. Zhang calmly looked at the running fighter and with all his might threw him back with a powerful blow. The guy finished off one of the fighters with powerful blows. Guards stood around and watched. One of the guards told his colleague that they all needed to attack the guy now. The fighters suddenly ran from all sides and rushed against Zhang. Zhang swung his hand and began to fight off the attacking fighters. The guy used circular blows to knock the guards away from himself and they flew off to the side. The main character got scared. He realized that he could be the guard's next victim. Xiao clapped his hands happily and told Beixuan that he had a lot of strength. The main character calmly explained to the guard what had happened with the misunderstanding. Qing smiled and told the boy not to worry. He promised that Xiao Churan would definitely not marry him. Zhang was silent. He looked ahead and did not answer the main character. People in the crowd were talking. They were surprised by the bodyguard's actions. The boy listened. He heard someone in the crowd say that Linghu was a rich and well-mannered man, but the bodyguard had neither. Xiang stood next to the bodyguard. They looked carefully at the people in the crowd. Zhang got very angry. He said that all this was really treacherous. The main character was very surprised. He did not understand what was happening in this novel. Chang thought to himself that people should sympathize with the protagonist and despise the villain. Chang looked at the bodyguard with displeasure. He didn't understand why he didn't just go and grab Xiao Churan. The protagonist looked at Xiao from the side. He thought that the bodyguard was just standing there and being stupid. The girl, sitting on the sofa, thought that Ling Guhan looked calm, but inside he was like a mad dog. The bodyguard said he didn't care about anyone else. As long as the girl was happy, he wouldn't regret what he did. The bodyguard walked very slowly to the side of his mistress. Zhang bowed to the girl and said that he would not allow anyone to force her into marriage. Chang looked from the side and thought that Zhang Beishuan was a real knight. The protagonist mentally asked Zhang to take Xiao for himself. The girl looked at her bodyguard with displeasure and said that he irritated her. The main character was surprised. He couldn't understand why the girl had a displeased face. Xiao looked away with displeasure. The bodyguard decided to approach her. The guy grabbed the girl by the hand. He asked fearfully, "Is she really planning an escape?" Xiao looked ahead with displeasure. She didn't like that Zhang was next to her. The girl angrily asked the guy why he decided that she wanted to go with him. Xiao turned angrily towards the main character and looked at him with displeasure. The bodyguard was very surprised when the girl turned around and walked away from him. Zhang clenched his fist with all his might. He was unhappy that girlfriend had left him. Xiao decided that if she left with Zhang Beixin, she would become part of his harem. The girl looked at the guy and thought that she had figured out his thoughts. The bodyguard from the side called the girl by name with great displeasure. Zhang grabbed his girlfriend by the hand. He asked the girl, "Is she afraid that Chang will hurt her or ruin her future?" The main character asked his rival why he came so close to him. He decided that the bodyguard was going to beat him. Zhang looked at the protagonist and told him not to even think about touching the girl. Chang fearfully explained to his companion that he had misunderstood everything. The girlfriend told the main character to step aside. The guard stood with his back to the girl. He said that she did not want to see the main character, but she forced herself. Xiao angrily shouted at her friend that she would never go with him. The guy hugged the girl's hand. He said that the Linghu family would want to take revenge on him. Xiao was very surprised. She looked at the guy with great incomprehension. The girl decided that she was giving up. She couldn't understand Zhang's train of thought. The protagonist said that silence was her consent. She was really afraid of the Linghu family's revenge. Zhang told his girlfriend that she was very gentle and considerate. He did not understand how she fell into the clutches of monsters. The bodyguard turned around angrily and looked at the main character with hatred. She thought to himself in fear that everything was happening exactly like the scene from the book. The main character looked at the girl with a fiery gaze. He mentally called her a despicable woman. Xiao looked at his frightened girlfriend. He thought angrily that she was playing so hard just to kill him. The girl looked at the angry Linghu Khan with displeasure. She decided that he had completely lost his mind. A man came up from the side. He shouted to Zhang that he was now superfluous here. His son-in-law could only be Linghu Han. The main character thought to himself in fear that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Chang looked at the man's back very carefully. He thought that he was using the same method to fool people. The bodyguard angrily told his companion that he was allowing his daughter to marry a worthless man. He asked, "Is the man really the girl's father?" Zhang turned around and told the girl that he didn't need anyone but her. Zhao explained that she didn't want to go anywhere. The girl got angry. She didn't understand why her bodyguard didn't understand simple words. Zhang said that she was very timid. He promised that he would come back for her soon. The main character asked the guy in surprise, "Is he really leaving now?" The bodyguard turned around and told the boy that it was not over yet. He promised that he would take Qian's life. Zhang pointed his hand at the people in the hall and said that they were putting others down and exalting themselves. The bodyguard looked angrily at the people and said that they would all bow down before him. Xiang was scared because the bodyguard was already leaving. He asked him to stay and think it over carefully. The main character ran up to his rival and said that he had to find a way to escape with Xiao Churan. The bodyguard replied that he would keep his word and take his girlfriend. Chang looked at the girl with excitement. He thought that if the bodyguard took Xiao now, then he would not have to go back later. The girl closed her eyes in displeasure. She listened to the guys arguing next to her. She looked at her male acquaintances and thought that she was already tired of them. The girl loudly and angrily shouted at the guys to stop. The guys fell silent. At this time, Xiao extended her hand and grabbed the main character's clothes. The girl kissed the main character. A security guard stood nearby and looked at him in surprise. Chang was very scared by his girlfriend's unexpected kiss. He didn't even have time to say anything. Xiao told the guard to leave with displeasure. She only likes Lingu Han. The guy got really angry. He didn't want to just let his girlfriend go. Zhang realized that the girl was very confused. He didn't know how he could save her. Zhang looked angrily at the protagonist and said that he needed to bankrupt the Linghu company. The main character was scared when he heard such words from the bodyguard. The system congratulated the owner on completing the task. Xiao Churan will help him to hold out for 5 chapters. The main character received a villa on the shore of a lake with an area of 600 square meters for completing the task. The protagonist fell to his knees. He thought happily that he had 9 zeros in his bank account and didn't need a villa. The main character was lying on his bed in his new house, holding a glass in his hands. Chiang said to himself that the old man's birthday celebration was over. He had a couple of free days. Chiang happily closed his eyes. He didn't even know what he could say to the system. The system happily informed the owner that the second part of the story begins today. According to the plot of the novel, Xiao and Linghu are forced to enter into a marriage alliance. Xiao invited the newlyweds to a banquet. The party was hosted by the general director of Dihao, a man named Tang Zhu. Yunju is Xiao Dazhuang's uncle. He is already old and sick. Many people want to win Tang Zhu's favor. Linghu Han also wants to win his favor. The main character offered a wonderful doctor for the old man. He brought him with him. Zhang created a real sensation at the banquet. He got hold of a copy of the sacred healing scripture and achieved success. Zhang Beixuan's miraculous hands allowed Tang to witness a true medical miracle. The old man suddenly jumped to his feet from the wheelchair and said that he was healed. The main character was very disappointed. Because of this incident, Linghu Tang lost the biggest support of the Yue family. This led to his future end. The old man demanded that Dazhuang never see his son-in-law again. Chang and the old man were very scared when they heard these words. The main character said in an angry voice that today is the most suitable day to attend a banquet. The protagonist sadly told the system that Zhang Beixuan had already mastered the Holy Scripture. This meant that he needed to prepare for a beating. The system told the owner not to forget about his mission. The main character will return, and he must survive. At this moment, the door suddenly opened and a stranger ran in. He called the Khan. The guest ran in and shouted to the main character that the old man was having a banquet today and he needed to get going. The protagonist said excitedly that Hao Qiang appeared in front of him. The system informed the owner that Hao Qiang is also known as the King of Provocations. The system warned the protagonist that if he was near the Hao, the risk of death increased by 50%. The main character looked at the guest and thought that he should get rid of him. Chiang put his hand on the boy's shoulder and said that he had no need for a bodyguard. Hao would go to America to become a stock trader for their Linghu family. The guy headed towards the exit with his bags. He said that he didn't know anything at all. The main character told the guy to believe in himself and call him the best. He saw him off near the plane. Hao flew away in a plane in surprise. He couldn't believe that he was the best. The main character on the ground raised his hand up and shouted to his friend that he was the best. Qiang happily said to himself that he felt much calmer now that he was rid of Hu. The protagonist looked at his watch. He noticed that the banquet was about to begin. People were approaching the building and walking up the stairs. It was a family-run hotel. A car stopped and a guy got out of it. He headed towards the entrance to the building. Qiang straightened his tie. He decided to contact the girl on the phone. The guy called and told Churan that he was already there. He decided to wait for his girlfriend. Xiao remembered that he was already engaged to the girl and could call her Churan. The girl got out of the car. She asked the guy why he seemed familiar to her. The guest in evening dress slowly walked from the car straight to Chang. The girl put her hand on the guy and said that she now remembered. The guest grabbed the guy by the tie and angrily told him that he was her ex. The guy looked at the red-haired stranger with surprise. He called her Mao Qiu. The guy looked at the girl with great surprise. At this time, the plot memories began to launch. In college, Mao Qiu was Linghu Han's classmate. They often met. The relationship between the guy and the girl was going very well. But in the end, the Khan and his girlfriend parted ways due to a misunderstanding. Very soon, Khan became friends with Xiao Churan. He immediately parted ways with Mao Qiu. Mao looked at the guy silently. She studied him carefully with her eyes. The girl angrily told the guy that he had already forgotten her and that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Linghu Han was very annoyed that he did not cherish his ex-girlfriend. The girl was surprised. She couldn't understand where the voice in her head came from. Mao looked around with interest. She decided that it was Linghu Han speaking. The girl turned to the side and noticed with surprise that the guy had disappeared somewhere. Mao was very angry. She did not understand where the main character could have hidden. Khan approached the guy near the car and asked how much this car cost. The main character thought to himself that another main character had appeared. The girl thought that the guy was far away from her now. She still heard a voice in her head very close. The main character asked the guy if he wanted a light. The Khan looked at the girl and thought that she had a good figure, but she was still not sent to the main character's harem. The Khan thought to himself with displeasure that first they took away his beloved girlfriend and ex-girlfriend. Mao angrily shouted to herself that she could now hear everything well. The girl approached the guy and asked in a stern voice what kind of nonsense he was talking about. The Khan looked at the girl with fear and explained that he had not said anything. Mao was very angry because Linghu denied it to her. The girl reminded the guy that he was trying to get Xiao Churan. But now he makes her angry. The protagonist thought that there was no point in him begging Xiao for a divorce. Khan thought he didn't like girls like Xiao Churan. He would have liked Mao more. The girl looked at the guy in surprise. She was thinking about his words. Mao realized that the guy had no idea that she could hear his voice. Khan was silent. The girl thought about his words about how he said that she was better than Xiao Churan. Mao sternly asked her companion why he was upset when she asked about Xiao Churan. The girl asked the main character, "Does he really want to marry Xiao?" Khan thoughtfully answered that marriage is a real trap. Mao asked the guy, why is he still a loyal dog for Xiao Churan? The protagonist thought angrily to himself that he was forced to be a loyal dog for Xiao. Khan thought to himself that because of Xiao Churan, Zhang's level of hatred had already reached the sky. He would gladly send the girl away somewhere. The girl laughed merrily. She was very amused by the words of the main character. The Khan could not understand why the girl was laughing. He decided that she was sick. The girlfriend approached the guy and said that the misunderstanding was not his fault. Mao told the guy that it was a shame because he was getting married soon. The Khan became very excited. He wanted to go back to good times. The guy hugged the girl with his arms. He thought that Mao was much better than Xiao Churan. At this moment, the car stopped abruptly and a girl got out of it. The surprised girl heard the main character's words that Mao was better than her. Xiao looked at the guy very angrily as he stood next to the red-haired girl. Churan got very angry. She slowly called the main character by name. The girl looked at the main character and called him very angrily. Khan stood aside and talked with his girlfriend. He didn't even notice that Xiao came up to him. Xiao looked angrily at the guy next to the girl and decided that she would outsmart them. Churan suddenly ran up to the guy and joyfully shouted that she had been looking for him for a long time. The main character was surprised. Xiao was silent for a moment. She looked at the guy with great desire. The girl hugged the main character and called him her fiancé. Xiao put his hands on the guy's face. He looked at her with surprise. Xiao very unexpectedly hugged the main character and kissed him. Qiang was very surprised. He could not understand why such a change had happened to the girl. Mao looked calmly ahead. She realized that her opponent had used a trick. Mao looked at the frightened protagonist and told him that they would talk at the banquet. The girl waved her phone at the guy and said that her number hadn't changed. Mao walked calmly to the side. Xiao turned around and looked at the main character. The disgruntled girlfriend reached out to the side and grabbed the guy by the clothes. Xiao angrily told the guy that he was a married man but was dating other women. Chang explained to the girl that she was behaving badly and reminded her that there was no one around. The main character told the girl that she didn't really want to marry him. She explained to the guy in an angry voice that he couldn't call off the engagement in front of everyone. The Khan sternly asked his girlfriend why she didn't follow her true love. She said she believed that her true love would be the one she named. The girl tried to hit the main character with her hand in displeasure. Zhang came up from behind. The guard looked at the girl and said that she looked sad. Xiao was tense at this time. She was still arguing with her friend. The guard said to himself that Khan had already gotten himself Xiao, but he was still rushing between other women. Zhang clenched his fist. He realized that it was his duty to save Churan. The guard said angrily that he wanted to trample the Khan into the dirt so that Churan would know his true face. The main character angrily told the girl not to bother him in public. Xiu told the guy that they were engaged and that there was nothing special about it. Han told the girl that she was angry and couldn't calm down. The main character suggested that they talk to the girl about divorce later. Khan thought that Zhang Beishuan would definitely appear and come out when he and the girl had a fight. The guy looked at his girlfriend and decided that he should keep his distance from her. The Khan suddenly shouted to the girl that someone had called her and he wanted to move away. Xiao turned around and said in a dissatisfied voice that the guy hated her. At that moment, a man came up. He greeted the guy. The main character was surprised when he saw his uncle and some old man next to him. The man looked at the main character and said that he had prepared a gift for his uncle. The man pointed to the side and said that Dr. Shangguan was next to him. The old man adjusted his glasses on his head and greeted the main character with a smile. Xiao looked at the old man with great surprise. He seemed familiar to him. The man whispered to the protagonist that he could bring Dr. Shangguang to treat Tang. As a result, the Tang Xiao and Lingu families would become the strongest alliance in the country. The main character became very worried. He pointed a trembling finger at the old man and said that they had to stop. The Khan asked again, "What is the doctor's name?" He said in fear that he might have misheard. According to the original plot of the novel, the doctor whose name the main character translated for the sick old man was Shangguan. Very soon, the Khan brought the miracle doctor to Mr. Tang. But Zhang beat the doctor and accused him of quackery. The protagonist thought that he sent Hu away from himself only so that he would not find a miracle doctor for him. But the doctor suddenly appeared. The Khan thought with displeasure that the miracle doctor had appeared after all, and the plot, it turned out, was not so easy to change. The main character thought that even if some events in the book were changed, the main point would still remain. The man put his hand on the boy's shoulder and asked why he froze. He suggested taking a doctor with him. The main character told the man that he had a stomachache and needed to go to the toilet. The Khan ran to the side with all his might. He shouted to the doctor to wait for him. The guy came out onto the veranda of the banquet hall. He stood and held a glass of wine in his hands. The Khan said slowly and thoughtfully to himself that everything had changed very much. A girl came up from the side. She asked the guy, "What is he sighing about?" Mao stood next to the guy. She said that she noticed his concern for Xiao Churan. The girl extended her hand to the guy and said that he was not compatible with Xiao. The main character grabbed the girl's hand. He knew that she would be Zhang's lover in the future. The Khan looked at the girl and demanded that she let him go. He explained that he already had a bride. The guy thought that in this novel you can't touch beautiful women. They are all in the harem of the main male character. Mao looked at the guy and told him that the engagement could be called off. The main character became very worried. He knew that the engagement could not be cancelled. He decided that this was some kind of test of willpower. The Khan stood and tried to restrain himself. He did not understand why he loved a girl with a curvy figure and a thin waist. Mao was very surprised that the guy thought that way about her. The girl put her hands on the guy's shoulder and asked who he liked more. The main character turned away and said that he only liked his fiancée. The Khan felt very anxious. He could not bear it any longer. The girl touched the guy's ear and explained that he still hadn't answered her question. The main character, in a frightened voice, demanded that the girl behave with dignity. The Khan felt a very strong anxiety in his body. He decided that he was no longer considered a man. Mao thought that the guy was saying one thing and thinking something completely different. She laughed cheerfully. The main character looked at the girl in surprise. He was still very shy. Khan glanced to the side with excitement. He noticed that Zhang Beishuan was walking there. The main character pushed the girl away with his hands and said that even if he were engaged for one day, she would remain a simple passerby to him. The Khan thought to himself with displeasure that he had pushed the girl away. He could no longer stand this. The protagonist stood and thought that he was destined to take into account the scapegoat. He can look, but not touch. Zhang stood nearby. Mao laughed very hard. She told the main character that he was very cute. The main character asked the girl with displeasure, "Does she really not take him seriously?" The Khan thought to himself with displeasure that the heroine of the novel does not take anyone seriously except the main character. The main character looked angrily at the girl and asked why she was laughing at him. Mao laughed happily and told her friend that she remembered something funny. The guy decided that it was time to leave as soon as possible. The main character turned around and told the girl that he was leaving. His girlfriend looked after him in surprise. The Khan opened the door into the room and prepared to go inside. The main character heard a noise. He looked away at the girl. Mao was sitting on the floor with her leg twisted. She told the guy that she had fallen. The main character stood there in fear. He thought that the girl might have fallen, but he didn't make a single move. The Khan looked at the girl with great attention. He could not believe that she was the heroine of a novel. The main character turned around and looked carefully into the hall where the guests were. The Khan looked closely and noticed that Zhang Beishuan was looking at him. Mao extended her hand to the guy. She said that he still hadn't helped her up. The girl cunningly thought that she could make the guy fall in love with her. The main character told the girl that she was wearing high-heeled shoes and no one would judge her if she fell. The guy thought to himself that he had made a mistake. He couldn't hurt Mao Chu. The main character was afraid that the girl might get angry and complain to Zhang. Khan realized that he was doomed if Zhang Beishuan wanted to avenge the girl. The main character thought that he understood it clearly. He turned his back to his girlfriend. Mao told the guy with displeasure that if he didn't help her, she would get angry and the consequences would be serious. The Khan turned to the girl very frightened and decided to calm her down as quickly as possible. The main character supported the girl and told her to be more careful. Mao clung to the guy. She thought that she would never allow Baiswan to become her lover. The main character asked the girl if she needed to call a doctor. The Khan, accompanied by the girl, wanted to head towards the exit. He decided to help her go. Mao looked at the guy with concern and explained that she couldn't go. The girl slyly suggested to the guy that he take her in his arms. She reminded him that he was already holding her by the waist. The main character became very excited and nervous. He could no longer restrain himself. Khan felt the girl touch him. At that moment, Zhang appeared from behind. Zhang abruptly approached the main character and put his hand on his shoulder. The protagonist was surprised. He turned around and noticed Baishuan behind him. Zhang approached the girl and took her in his hand. He shouted at the main character that he was a worthless piece of work. Mao turned to the guy and asked with displeasure, "Who is he?" Zhang pointed his finger at the protagonist and said that he tricked Xiao into getting engaged to him. He accused the protagonist of pestering innocent girls. The Khan was very surprised. He could not understand who he could have just pestered. The guests at the banquet turned around and looked in surprise at the girl and the guys next to them. Mao turned from the balcony to the guests and told them to stop arguing. Zhang pointed his hand at the guy and said in an angry voice that he was not arguing with him, but was only condemning him. Zhang angrily shouted at the main character that the girl must definitely find out about his actions. A guy came up from behind and put his hands on the shoulders of the two guests. The stranger angrily asked the boys what connected them with his younger sister. The guy Mao Xiaojun looked at Zhang angrily and questioningly. The Khan looked at the guys in front of him with excitement and thought that he remembered. The main character thought and remembered that Zhang and Jun had simply conspired. The girl Mao was the daughter of the eldest son of the family. The guy Jun was the son of the youngest son of the Mao family. According to the plot, they compete and try to help their fathers become the heads of the family business. The guys Zhang and Jun have known each other for a long time. When the struggle for the inheritance began, they entered into a secret agreement. Zhang suggested that Jun convinced Qiu Yue's father to invest large sums of money in a dubious project called Mars Photovoltaics. Zhang told his companion that the project was doomed. Before the boy knew it, all of his uncle's property would be transferred to his father. However, Baekshun had his own motives. When Qiu Yue's father's investment went bad, Zhang lent him a helping hand. He earned his daughter's affection. Mao eventually became one of his mistresses. The Khan thought deeply. He realized that both guys really were bastards. Mao was very scared. She didn't expect Jun to appear here. Jun gently supported the girl. He asked his sister how she felt. Mao became very worried. She looked at her brother with fear and suspicion. The girl looked at the guy and realized that it was all his fault. She remembered that her father had mentioned the Mars Photovoltaics project. He had invested a lot of money in it. Mao stood unsteadily on her feet. Her brother supported her so that she would not fall. Mao put her arm around the guy. She said that she felt dizzy and wanted to sit down. The girl held a glass of wine in her hands. She did not understand how the main character could find out about all this. Mao sat down on the chair. She decided that Ling Hu Han had decided to take care of her secretly. The girl became worried. She decided that the guy had not forgotten about her. All this seemed like true love to her. Zhang came close to the main character and grabbed his hand with his own. Zhang angrily demanded that Han leave, accusing him of bullying Mrs. Mao. Mao turned to the guy with excitement and shouted for him to wait. The girl shouted at the guard to let the main character go. She said that the Khan was a real gentleman. Mao looked at the bodyguards and said that he was asking people and did not know the truth. Zhang looked at the girl very angrily. He didn't say anything to her. The main character realized with fear that he was hated again. Mao turned to the guy and said that her leg hurt. She asked him to take her away. The main character looked at the girl with fear. He wanted her to find someone else for herself. Mao told the guy that if he dared to refuse, she would scream that he was pestering her. The girl looked slyly at her friend. The Khan told her in a displeased voice that she was very heartless. Mao prepared to leave. She told her brother that she would reckon with him after she learned the truth. Jun was very surprised. He did not understand what the girl had just told him. In the living room, the main character put his hand on the girl's shoulder and told her to sit down. Mao sat down on the chair. The main character stood next to her on one knee. The guy thought that as soon as he left here, he would immediately run away. The girl looked at the guy slyly. She realized that she would not give them a chance to escape. Mao stretched her legs forward and asked the surprised guy to massage them. The girl lifted her clothes up for convenience. Khan thought that if he touched Mao, Zhang would hate him to death. Mao moved closer to the guy. She said that it was all just a massage. The girl slyly threatened the guy that if he refused, she would start screaming. Mao started showing a countdown with her hands. She showed 3 fingers. The girl continued counting backwards. She showed the guy 2 fingers. Mao showed 1 finger and said that they needed to call the others. Khan answered that he completely agreed. Khan placed his hand on Mao's leg and told the girl that it was time to begin. The main character continued to gently stroke the girl's leg. He took off her shoes. He asked his girlfriend if it hurt too much. Mao answered that she needed to massage a little more. The Khan began to stroke the girl's leg. She shouted at him that this was too much. The main character took the girl's leg with his hands. He asked, "Do I need to massage it from the inside?" The girl shouted to the guy in great fear that he couldn't send her there. Mao screamed in fear. The guy asked her if he was doing it fast enough. The girl excitedly told the guy that he had made her feel very happy. She added that the Khan was very good at massage. Zhang was standing on the street. He lit a match from a box and handed it to the guy. Zhang told his companion that his sister was not paying attention to him. He asked what he should do. Jun looked at his companion and took a drag on his cigarette. He asked if he really liked his sister that much. Jun put his hand on his companion's shoulder and said that Mao respected strength and loved powerful men. Zhang asked his companion if Mao and the main character were acquainted. The guy said that at the moment Ling Hu Han is already engaged. He met the girl and remembered the past. Jun turned around and told his companion not to worry. He said he needed to go to the restroom. Zhang remained alone under the lamp near the shop. He silently watched the guy leaving. Zhang looked angrily ahead and thought that all the women around the main character would end up in his hands. A man came up from the side. After a pause, he greeted Zhang. The man looked at the boy in surprise and said that he was his uncle's wonderful doctor. He asked Tan to introduce him to his uncle later. Zhang told his companion that they were one family. Zhang happily turned to the side. He thought that it was a good time to subjugate the Xiao Mao and Tan families at the same time. The guests in the hall began to bustle about. Someone shouted that Grandpa had fainted. People gathered in Mr. Tanya's room at night. The frightened boy shouted to his grandfather to wake up. The man looked at the old man and said that his relative's condition left much to be desired. He asked Dr. Shangguan if he knew what to do. The doctor looked at the patient with surprise and interest. He said that he knew what needed to be done. Shangguan said thoughtfully that he would first feel the old man's pulse. Zhang thought with displeasure that the doctor was a charlatan. As a result, Ling Hu Han would not live long. The boy ran up to his grandfather in fear and shouted that the old man had woken up. The guy said that he had consulted many doctors about his father's illness, but none of it brought results. The very excited boy asked for help from his friends and relatives. He said that the Tan family would not forget their kindness. Jun turned to his friend and asked him to sort things out and help the head of the Tan family. Zhang thought that the guy next to him was an idiot. He decided that it would not be a bad idea for him to have such a debtor. Zhang looked ahead thoughtfully. He decided that he could allow his favor to be used once more. Bei Shun said out loud that he had not checked the patient's pulse and could not be completely sure. He added that the chance of success was at least 50%. Jun was very happy. He looked at his companion and said that he was not mistaken about him. Jun put his hand on his friend's shoulder. He said that if he cured the patient, he should not forget to mention him. After this, the guy decided not to waste time. He pulled Zhang by the hand after him. Bei Shun suddenly stopped his companion. The guy did not understand what Zhang wanted from him. Zhang explained to his companion that they did not need to rush to act first. They could wait for the right moment. Jun turned around and looked at the old man. He asked, "Was it really the Xiao family who brought the skilled doctor here?" Jun shouted with hope in his voice that Shangguan was a popular doctor. He could cure Grandpa. Zhang calmly explained to his companion that the famous doctor would not be able to cure Grandpa Tan. But the two of them together would be able to. That is why those around them would look at them with respect. Jun thought about it. He told his companion that there was some truth in his words. Jun very happily shouted to his companion that he had thought of everything. The guest grabbed Shangguan's hand. He said that there was a wonderful doctor present here. Zhang held his hand on the old man's shoulder. He said that this miracle doctor was recommended to them by the Xiao family. The guy looked at his companions happily. He told them in a satisfied voice that he relied on them. The doctor said in a cheerful voice that he would now examine the patient. A man came up from the side and coughed quietly. He decided to attract the doctor's attention. A man came up from the side. He silently looked at the doctor and pointed his finger to the side at the main character. The Khan became worried. He prepared to run away and did not understand why people around him were talking about him. The man walked up to the grandfather and placed his palm on top of his hand. He told him not to worry. The man told the patient that Shangguan was the reincarnation of the great ancient physician named Hua Tuo. The main character was scared. He didn't want his older brother to be so confident. Guang placed his hand on the patient's hand and began to check his pulse. The doctor said in a reasonable voice that this disease could be cured. The boy was very happy. Guan said that he could cure this disease with the imperial needle of the Wang family's heavenly silkworm. Zhang thought to himself that the doctor's treatment method, compared to his divine black pox needle, was sheer stupidity. Guan confidently grabbed some piece of paper with writing on it and threw it aside. The doctor looked at the lying patient. He asked young Master Linghu to come to him. The main character was very surprised that he was called. A surprised girl was standing next to him. The doctor asked the boy to help him. The Khan replied in a frightened voice that he had not studied medicine. The main character got angry. He didn't understand why the doctor wanted to drag him into this adventure. Guan adjusted his glasses and said that young Master Linghu was very modest. The doctor turned around and said to the guy, "Is he still planning on hiding this from everyone else?" Guan said that young Master Linghu has an innate talent for healing. The doctor smiled happily. The main character noticed with displeasure that Guan's eyes were darting. Guan turned to the side and told the guy to disinfect and hand him the needle. The doctor moved the needle towards the patient. He said that headaches were caused by neck and back injuries. The further the acupuncture points were located, the better. You need to select the right yin energy points. Through the temporal cavity, you can lower the temperature and restore the flow of yang energy. Guan stood next to the patient and told him which points they would use next. Zhang listened to him silently at the side. The main character was silent. He did not say anything in response to the doctor's words. Zhang suddenly told the doctor that he had given the correct sequence, but he lacked the skill and knowledge. Bei Shun angrily told the doctor that he couldn't even look at him. Guan pointed his hand at the guy and asked sternly, "Who does he think he is?" The doctor turned around and asked Mr. Tan to throw this boar out of the room. The man waved his hand to the side. He gestured for Guan to be escorted out of the room. Zhang told Mr. Tan sternly that he was the only one in this place who could save his grandfather. If they drove him away, the old man would lose hope of recovery. The doctor angrily told the boy that he personally was the only hope for Tanya's grandfather. The protagonist turned away with excitement. He decided that the conflict was beginning. Shai thought to herself excitedly that it was time to make a bet. Mao looked at the girl with excitement. She did not understand what kind of bet she needed to make. The doctor pointed his finger at the boy and said that he could argue with him. Zhang replied that he agreed. The doctor looked at the guy in front of him with great excitement. Guan told the boy that he should know the acupuncture technique he was using now. All that was left to do was to give him one more injection with a needle. The doctor demanded that the boy kneel before him if he would cure the patient. Suddenly, the doctor remembered something else and sharply pointed to the side with his hand. Guan pointed his hand sternly to the side and demanded that Zhang bow to young Master Linghu. Zhang looked angrily at the doctor and said what to do if he doesn't succeed. The main character stood to the side and listened attentively to everything. He called the doctor in fear. The Khan stretched out his hand to the side in fear. He wanted to stop the doctor. Zhang angrily told the doctor that he and the Khan would have to lie at his feet. The main character was scared and thought that he was a loser. According to the script, Dr. Shan should lose. Khan knew that the details of the bloodletting were known only to Zhang Beishuan. The doctor did not know about it. The main character thought that the doctor's ignorance was only to Zhang's advantage. The main character, with tears in his eyes, thought that he would have to kneel before his opponent. Both girls were deep in thought. They were discussing bloodletting at the dockery point. The girl thought sternly to herself that she would not let Zhang Beishuan get his way. The doctor carefully pushed the needle towards the patient's head. He said that he was giving the last injection. Patient came to his senses and looked ahead with a weakening gaze. The boy was very happy. He shouted that his grandfather was able to get back on his feet. The old man looked at the doctor and said that he was a master of his craft. His headache went away and there was no longer a burning sensation in his chest. The girl happily told the guy that the doctor was very wonderful. The main character listened attentively to everything. Khan remembered that the book said that Tan's grandfather vomited blood. After that, Zhang got the opportunity to prove himself. The old man suddenly felt very ill. He convulsively raised his hand to his mouth. Grandpa started vomiting blood. The guy asked him in fear, "What happened?" Zhang glanced cheerfully at the people in front of him and reminded them that no one believed him. Beishuan pointed at the frightened doctor and said that he was just a charlatan. The boy fearfully asked Zhang to help his father quickly. Beishuan told the people sternly that they had paid such a price for believing the word of a deceiver. Zhang pointed to the protagonist and said that they trusted the villains. Beishuan stepped forward abruptly and said that he had changed his mind. He no longer wanted the boy and the doctor to kneel in front of him. Zhang pointed his finger down and demanded that Han and the doctor lick his shoes until they shine. The two girls were very surprised when they heard such words. Mao shouted at her friend to stop. The girlfriends stood next to each other and held each other's hands. They were silent. Zhang was very unhappy because the protagonist was talking to his ex-girlfriend. At this time, Xiao was looking at him from the side. Beishuan turned to the girl and said that the main character did not deserve this. Zhang pointed his hand to the side at the girl and told the protagonist that it was because of her that he told him to lick his shoes. He added that Han was always rushing between two beautiful girls. Someone had to put him in his place. Mao turned around and told Zhang in a dissatisfied voice that she didn't need him. Beichuan was very surprised. He didn't expect to hear such words from her. Xiao asked the main character what technique they used when the doctor cured another patient who looked like Tanya's grandfather. Xiao happily shouted that a technique called bloodletting at the Da Zhui point was used. The girl thought that the main character knew everything, but was silent. She shouted out loud that she saw that Mr. Shangguan cured the patient. The girl came up and told her companions that bloodletting at the Da Zhui point was a secret final technique. The doctor thought to himself that he could now use such a technique. Shangguan told the old man and the boy that vomiting blood was a normal reaction. After he did the bloodletting, everything would be fine. Zhang thought to himself with excitement that the people around him understood all this themselves. The boy asked the doctor if everything would be okay. Shangguan held a test tube. He replied that everything would definitely be okay. Suddenly, the patient's eyes lit up brightly. He felt a great surge of strength. The old man seemed to be glowing. He shouted that he was young again. All his senses were heightened. His body was filled with energy. Grandfather ran to the doctor and said that the Tan family would be eternally grateful to him. Zhang was very unhappy. He did not understand how the doctor could know about his secret technique. The doctor turned to the guy very angrily and reminded him that the loser had to get on his knees. Shangguan pushed the boy in the back with his hand and demanded that he keep his word and kneel before young Master Linghu. Zhang was very scared and worried when he heard the doctor's demand. Beixuan angrily asked the people why they believed the quack doctor. Shangguan pointed his hand sternly to the side and reminded him that he had just cured Grandpa Tan. He didn't like that the guy accused him of cheating. Zhang fell silent in fear. The protagonist turned around and looked closely at the doctor. The Khan thought to himself with displeasure that all the problems had fallen on him. He wanted to be left alone. People around were talking. Someone said that the doctor had told the truth. Zhang reminded himself that he had the true knowledge of the divine needle of smallpox. He could not bow down to the doctor. Zhang became very excited and angry. He clenched his hand into a fist with all his might. Beichuan looked away angrily. He decided that he needed to show off his skills. Then the people around him would understand that he was a real master. Zhang glanced to the side and noticed the girl. He decided not to miss the chance to show off in front of her. Beichuan folded his hands together into palms. He decided to activate his magical abilities. Zhang held both his hands together and a magical glow appeared around him. People around were surprised. One of the guys said that he saw some kind of magic trick. The man said soberly that Zhang was using the skill of the divine needle of black pox. He didn't expect that he would ever be able to look at it. The protagonist looked ahead attentively. Someone next to him said that Bei Xuan could accurately control the divine needle of black pox. Khan glanced at the guy next to him. He realized that Zhang was using a distraction maneuver because he didn't want to kneel. The main character glanced to the side at the girls. He decided that Bei Xuan wanted to charm them. Khan didn't understand why the girls were looking at him. They should have been looking at Zhang. The guy looked closely and saw that Mao turned around very angrily and looked to the side. Khan also saw that Xiao was also looking ahead with a very displeased look. Mao suddenly rushed to the guy and put her hand on his face. She told him in a sly voice that he could do it openly. Xiao was very angry. She looked at the girl in front of her with displeasure and said that this was impudence. June appeared from the side. He said in a conciliatory voice that Zhang's words might seem rude. But Dr. Shangguan is older than the guy and will not be angry with him. The doctor turned around and told Jian that he must make sure that the arrogant young man did not disgrace his dignity. The guy smiled happily at the doctor and said that he had an excellent sense of humor. June told the doctor and the boy not to quarrel. He reminded them that they were gathered here for the sake of Grandpa Tan's recovery. They all had one goal. An old man suddenly approached from the side and addressed everyone present. The grandfather smiled at his guests and said that he wanted to thank them. The protagonist looked ahead and thought that June deserved to be Zhang's first henchman. Zhang looked away. He thought that if he lost today, the main character would break his legs. After some thought, Beixuan let out a relaxed breath. The guy approached the girl and asked her with concern if she was angry. He reminded her that his words were loud, but it was all because of concern. Xiao turned away in displeasure when she heard these words. The girl looked angrily at the guy and said that she didn't need any excuses. Zhang was very surprised. He didn't even know what to answer her. The guy grabbed the girl by the shoulders. He told her that with his powers, he would make her the richest and most respected woman in China. The protagonist listened very carefully. He wanted to hear what Zhang was talking about. Zhang looked at the girl seriously and said that he tried for her sake. He promised to give her a better future. Xiao was very surprised when she heard from the guy that he tried for her. Zhang excitedly explained to her that he could cure Grandpa Tan with just 3 needles. The main character was closely following his rival's conversation. He realized that there are girls who take fiery speeches seriously and lose the ability to think rationally. Xiao thought about it. She realized that all the words Zhang said on her side were false. The girl thought with fear that if it weren't for the main character, she would have actually believed it. Zhang extended his hand to his girlfriend. Xiao couldn't believe that Chuang would actually forgive the guy. The protagonist thought with excitement that he was only engaged to Xiao. He had no intention of marrying her. The Khan looked at the girl with great attention and remembered that she was his bride. The guy extended his hand to the girl and asked with concern what was wrong with her. Shai sternly reminded her companion that she had not forgotten that he must kneel down and lick the winner's shoes. Zhang looked at his girlfriend in amazement. He couldn't believe her words. Lingu was also very unhappy. He turned to the side and did not understand what was happening there. The main character looked at the girl Xiao. He did not understand why she was angering her friend again. The girl suddenly turned to the side. She looked at the main character very angrily. Lingu telepathically demanded that the girl look not at him, but at Zhang. Xiao reminded her friend in a stern voice to kneel down because he had lost. Zhang was shocked. He didn't understand why she wanted him to kneel in front of the main character. Lingu was frightened and unconsciously grabbed Mao's girlfriend's hand. The guy was scared because the book plot was returned to its original point. Ma happily thought that the main character loved her. Because he grabbed her hand, Xiu turned around and looked at the protagonist with fear. She wanted to tell him something. The girl called the main character inside her in a very displeased voice. Xiao told her friend to come to her. She reminded him that Zhang had already admitted his defeat. Xiao continued to call the main character to her in a dissatisfied voice. Zhang watched her from the side with excitement. Zhang sadly imagined to himself that the girl was worried that he would be laughed at because he couldn't lose. The guy came up to her and told his girlfriend in an honest voice that she reminded him that he should accept defeat with dignity. He didn't want anyone to question his honesty. The main character turned to the side with suspicion. He was watching the guy closely. Lingu asked his partner with great excitement what he wanted to do. Zhang explained that he could not ignore his girlfriend's sincere intentions. Zhang sternly told the protagonist that he was kneeling because of the girl, not because of him. The guy prepared to fall to his knees in front of his girlfriend. Lingu was very scared. He watched with great excitement as Zhang prepared to fall to his knees. The main character grabbed his surprised companion by the hand. He shouted at Zhang not to come near him. Lingu grabbed the girl by the shoulders from behind with his hands. He thought to himself in fear that if he humiliated the main character like that, he might not survive at all. Ma waved her arms in displeasure and hit the guy with all her might. She angrily asked him who he took her for. The main character felt a strong blow to the stomach. He shouted to the girl that he wanted to run to the toilet. Lingu quickly ran to the side. He shouted to his surprised girlfriend that they would meet in the toilet later. The system happily informed the owner that he had finished the second chapter. The main character looked away in surprise. He was amazed that after all this he was able to survive. Xiao and Ma looked away in amazement. They couldn't understand where the guy had just run off to. At this time, a general refraction of space suddenly began. Lingu opened his eyes and looked carefully ahead. He was moving into the system reality. The main character moved through a portal to another dimension. It was as if he was falling somewhere. Lingu couldn't come to his senses after being teleported. He closed his eyes in fear. The main character looked intently ahead with surprise after he moved. Lingu found himself in a small room next to the sofa. Behind him was a transparent golden mesh system. It informed the owner that he would be able to rest for the next 3 days and prepare for the next task. The main character felt very thirsty. He reached forward and grabbed a glass of water. The main character grabbed a glass of water and began to drink it very greedily. Lingu felt a calmness in his body. He sat in the chair and asked the system, how many points did he get this time? The system informed the owner that he had received 100 points for the task. He had only 2,333 points. The guy discontentedly called the system stingy. The main character shouted at the system that he was suffering humiliation and insults, and was getting very few points from it. The electronic assistant informed the owner that the calculation of system points is based on a perfect algorithm. He can be calm. The system informed the owner that the number of points depended on his ability and the task, and on how well he showed himself. The guy asked the electronic assistant how much more he had left to return to his world. The system told the protagonist that his travel channel was created because he was killed by a falling advertising sign in the original world. The owner must exchange points for a resurrection item to return to the original world. The main character happily clapped his hands. He asked the system how much he could exchange for his current points. The system thought and started to make a calculation. The owner watched it closely through the window. For the resurrection item, he needed 80,888 points. The system told the disgruntled owner that his current points were still far from the required amount. He could not exchange the item. The main character swung and threw a pillow at the system window. He was irritated. Lingu fell onto the sofa. He felt very desperate. The main character calculated to himself that he needs to complete 8,000 tasks to get a chance to return. After each task, he needs to rest for 3 more days. Lingu was deep in calculations. He said in a dissatisfied voice that it would be better for him to simply die now. The system encouraged the owner. It said that he still had a lot of time ahead. If he completed the tasks well, the rewards would increase. The main character fell tiredly onto the bed. He said in a doomed voice that everything could fall apart and he did not want to be resurrected. The protagonist was alone in the Lingu family hall 3 days later. The main character opened his eyes. He looked ahead with a tired and unseeing gaze. After a short pause, the guy suddenly closed his eyes. He was still in the process of teleportation. Lingu was transported to a parallel reality. A very bright shining light appeared in front of him. The guy suddenly felt pain and dizziness in his head. He put his hand to it. Lingu held his hand near his head. Once again after teleportation, he felt dizzy and could barely stand. There were unfamiliar warriors around him. The stranger ran up to the main character from behind and called him in a loud voice. "Akan!" The unknown fighter pointed his finger at the frightened guy. He shouted to those around him so that everyone could see what state their Akan was in now. The fighter turned around and started telling that Akan was fading before our eyes and his heart was broken by love. It was all because of the damned Su family. The main character shouted angrily at the stranger not to shake him by the body. The system informed the owner that the full text of the novel had been synchronized. He had to complete the task as soon as possible with a high score. According to the script, today the villain Dinhu Khan's beloved was getting married. The guy thought to himself with displeasure that today they were in for an ancient melodrama with lots of tears and betrayals. The main character read the book carefully. He learned that his beloved's name was Su Huining. The guy read the script and found out that the Linghu and Su families had already agreed on an engagement. But at the very last moment before the wedding, the Su family decided to take some poor man as a son-in-law. The son-in-law who entered the family turned out to be the main character. The warrior stood next to the main character. He grabbed his chest with his hand in displeasure and called out the name of Nin, and Uncle Lingu Shang put his hand on the boy's shoulder from behind. He said in a sorrowful voice that their Akan had literally given his loyal heart to be torn apart this time. The main character's cousin, Linghu Tian, came up to him from the side. He sternly suggested that he go and finish off Ning Yi on the spot. The third uncle of the main character, in a reasonable voice, suggested to the second brother to discipline his son well. He did not like that he suggested to finish someone off. Father Fen told the boy in a thoughtful voice that the Su and Linghu families had been connected for a very long time. Their union was supposed to be a double joy. Shan came up and told his relative with displeasure that the Su family was the first to break the agreement. Now there was no point in clinging to old feelings. The man said in a dissatisfied voice that if the Su family did not value friendship, then they would not maintain any ties with them. The main character became very worried when he heard such words from his relative. Linghu looked around carefully. He realized that his relatives did not know that the Su family would soon become the first in the trading circles of Tianchuan City. The guy Ning would soon do something that all the merchants in the country would bow before him. The protagonist realized that his family had decided to break ties with the Su family due to ignorance. Linghu thought about it and decided to himself that the guy was Ning and would be a good groom for the girl. The main character decided that Nin was the son-in-law of an impoverished family. If he continued to behave like this, he would sooner or later become a villain. The men looked at each other carefully. One of them excitedly decided that he had heard something incredible. The main character glanced to the side at Tian and Fen's relatives. He offered them a seat in an excited voice. Fen sat down on a small bench. He told his relatives with a smile that they should all sit down. Sean, with a smile, suggested that his partners speak pleasantly. Tian looked to the side with great fear and excitement. He did not understand what was happening at all. Fen coughed. He calmly suggested to his relatives to forget about all this. The main character was delighted. He suggested to his relatives to think more broadly and wish the newlyweds 100 years of happiness. Tian sat. He asked the main character with displeasure. Did he really say all this seriously? He didn't need to pretend to be strong and smile. Lingu proudly told his partners that he himself was the power itself. The main character stepped aside. He told his relatives that it was late and time to go to bed. He silently decided to escape as soon as possible while he had a chance. Tian looked after his relative with surprise. He was surprised by his brother's words. A silent Fen stood next to him. Tian glanced to the side with excitement. He realized that he had just heard the thoughts of Khan's brother. Sean turned around and walked away. He sternly told his relatives that they were free and could leave. Sean looked away in surprise. He realized that he had just heard his son's thoughts. The main character entered his room and fell onto the bed. He was finally able to rest. Lingu looked to the side in disbelief. He told himself that everything around him was wrong. The main character stood up and realized that the system was very silent today. Lingu looked ahead. He called the system and brother Sis to him in a loud voice. The main character looked closely and listened. There was silence around him. The main character thought about it and told himself that everything around him somehow didn't add up. The woman came up to the guy from the side and grabbed him by the clothes. She angrily reminded him that the teacher had been waiting for him in the office for half a day. Tian told Qin Weiyue with a dissatisfied voice that she shouldn't drag him anywhere. He didn't like studying. The fighter said with a proud voice that he was the second young master of the Linghu clan, and he was born above everyone. He didn't need to read books yet. Qin sternly explained to her partner that he was already an adult. He had to learn at least something from the wisdom of the saints, so that they wouldn't make fun of him. Tian turned his back to his partner. He told her that he would not read books. Qin looked at the guy very angrily. She called him by name with displeasure. The main character was sleeping motionless on his bed in his room, in a dead sleep. At this time, someone unexpectedly knocked on the main character's door and demanded that he open it. Lingu was sleeping soundly on the bed. He still couldn't wake up. The main character stood up and in a sleepy voice told the guest that he had woken him up and seemed to have dug up his ancestor's grave. Tian ran up to his brother from behind and gave him a displeased push. He shouted that they had the same ancestors. Tian said in a sleepy voice to the sleepy protagonist that he had disgraced himself in front of all of Sanzhou. Lingu walked up to the bed and fell on it unconscious. He asked the guy in a weak voice, "Is this really all true?" Tian told the main character in a dissatisfied voice about the rumors that were circulating about him. The main character opened his eyes abruptly and with great excitement. He looked carefully ahead. Lingu looked sideways at his relative. He realized that he was being discussed on the street. The guy remembered the second young master of the Lingu clan. He was very spoiled. After the fall of the clan, he died in the most miserable way. The protagonist glanced at his relative. He remembered that this guy eventually paid at the hands of the scientists he despised. They drowned him in a cesspool. Lingu turned around and looked at his guest with great displeasure. The main character turned around with displeasure. He thought that his relative would have a miserable fate. He couldn't help him in any way. Lingu waved to his partner and said that he was going to bed. Tian could go and continue walking wherever he wanted. Tian told the main character in a dissatisfied voice that there would be no more partying. He decided to study now. Lingu was surprised. He looked at his relative with displeasure and questioningly. Tian turned around. He shouted loudly that he would make all the scholars admire him, and they would fall on their knees before him. Lingu looked at his brother from the side in surprise. He decided that he was sick. It was a bright day in the sky. The main character was lying on the bed. He did not understand why the system did not give him any instructions. Lingu turned to the side on the bed. He decided to himself with displeasure that he should randomly look for instructions on how to complete the task. The system might consider him a slacker and deduct points from him. A young servant entered the room. He told the protagonist that the Su family had sent an invitation. The protagonist stood up and asked the guest, "Where is the invitation?" The servant informed the young master that the invitation was brought by a girl from the Su family. She invites everyone to dine at the Drunken Immortal. The guest told the young gentleman that if he did not agree to go, he would send the messenger back. The main character could not understand exactly which of the girls Su wanted to come to him. The servant answered the master that he did not know. Lingu turned around. He told the boy that he would go himself and sort everything out. The main character approached the gates of the Lingu estate. He was curious about who had come to see him. Lingu went out to the gate and saw some girl near it. He didn't know exactly who she was. The main character greeted the young lady. He wanted to know something from her. Lingu stood behind the young girl with red hair. She decided to turn to him. The guest began to turn around. She called the young gentleman. Lingu looked silently and with great attention at the girl next to him. The red-haired guest turned around. She was studying the main character very carefully. Lingu and the girl simultaneously looked ahead with displeasure. They recognized each other. The girl stood opposite the main character. She looked at him angrily. Linhu turned to the side and said that it was not him. The partner looked angrily at the guy and asked with displeasure why he was so nervous. The girl could not understand why the guy pretended that they did not know each other. Linhu smiled at the guest. He reminded her that she had brought him an invitation to the drunk immortal. The surprised guy could not understand whether such a thing was even possible. The partner moved her hand away in displeasure. She asked the guy why he was acting as if he didn't know her. It wasn't the first time they had met. The guest looked at the guy in surprise. She immediately decided to play along. The main character explained to the girl with a smile that he had just blurted out a few words and that was it. After his last meeting with the girl, everything seemed to have turned upside down for him. The guest grabbed the guy by the hand. She said in a joyful voice that it was all a coincidence. The partner looked at the guy's clothes. She said with displeasure that the green robe didn't suit him today. The frightened protagonist realized that Mao Qiu was in front of him now. She even remembered his previous outfit. The excited protagonist stood near the doors. He began to call the system to help him. The main character realized that the girl Mao Qiu was the main character of another novel. He did not understand why she showed up here. She looked at her partner with displeasure and said that she found out who he was. Mao looked at the guy with fire in her eyes. She told him in a displeased voice that he didn't marry Sue's childhood friend and now he's completely lost himself. The main character was scared and worried. He didn't even know what to answer his partner. The guy suddenly rushed behind the girl and covered her mouth. Mao tried to break free and shouted that she would speak. The main character told his partner in a very stern voice not to dare to blab. He reminded her that she was at his house. Mao broke away from the guy's hand. She asked him discontentedly, did he really decide to have a mistress at home? A woman entered the yard. She looked at the main character and his girlfriend with surprise. Mao shouted at the guy with displeasure to go easy on her. She felt pain. In the palace stood the mother of the main character named Wang Jie, together with Fen. Feng turned around and told the lady in surprise that he had just gone blind or deaf. The woman explained to her partner with a smile that the guy had just pulled Miss Sue's cousin Mao Qiu into his house in an embrace. The man asked the woman with interest when her son had managed to get together with a wife. Van turned around and excitedly explained to the man that she had just found out about it herself. Fen stepped aside, displeased. He didn't like that the main character was appearing to a girl in broad daylight. Van reminded her husband that Mao was an unmarried girl. They didn't need to go into the main character and his girlfriend's room now. Fen turned to the woman with displeasure. He asked her what she was offering him. Van near the estate gate suggested the man to wait until the girl left. Then they would discuss everything behind closed doors. A girl named Qin ran up from the side. She excitedly shouted to the man and woman that something bad had happened. Qina told her partners in a frightened voice that the boy Tian had rushed to the teacher. He had suddenly decided to take up his books and pass the exams. The woman and the man were very surprised when they heard that Tian had decided to take up studies. The teacher entered the room of a young man named Tian Yu. He was unrolling a scroll and wanted to tell him about the great teaching. The old man stood in front of the student with a large scroll, Tian recalled. And he could not tell his partner about the path of the great teaching. The teacher shouted at the student in a displeased voice that he didn't even know the word virtue. Concubine Shang named Xiao Taohong came to the window. She said in a dissatisfied voice that nothing could be learned from such an empty-headed guy. The woman closed her eyes, discontentedly immersed in her thoughts. Xiu turned around and moved away from the window. She decided that Tian was just pretending to be a diligent student. He wanted to trick his mother into giving him money. The main character entered the room with the girl and slammed the door behind him. Lingu asked his partner very displeasedly, how did she become Sue's cousin? Mao was sitting on a bench. She told the guy that suddenly the light flashed at the banquet and she lost consciousness. Then she woke up and refused the wedding in this world. Lingu walked from side to side discontentedly. He didn't understand how a character from the previous book could leak into this book with an official role. Mao asked the guy with excitement, Did he really jump out to the gate on purpose to get an invitation from Sue because he had not yet given up hope for her? Lingu answered his partner with displeasure that no one was going to take the wedding away from the main character. Mao looked at the guy with displeasure. She reminded him that in the last book he behaved completely differently. Lingu was very scared and worried when he realized that the girl had just told him about his past story. The main character realized that he was surprised and asked the girl again what previous book she had told him about. The protagonist realized with excitement that the girl herself realized that she was a character in the book. Mao looked at the guy very slyly. She told him in a stern voice that she heard everything from him. The main character asked the girl with great excitement how she could have heard all this. She laughed very slyly. She liked the guy's bewilderment. Mao came up and touched the surprised guy's face with her finger. She told him that she could hear all his quiet inner mockery. The main character sadly recalled to himself all his adventures during the previous book. Linhu was very unhappy. He was frightened and decided to himself that Mao was playing a joke on him. The girl looked slyly at the guy. She laughed joyfully to herself. The girl slyly approached the surprised guy from behind and said that she was not playing a joke on him. Linhu looked at his partner with admiration. He was struck by her smile. Mao slyly asked the main character, "Does he really like her smile so much?" The guy covered his mouth with his hands in fear. He realized that the girl heard his thoughts. The main character guessed that the girl heard his thoughts thanks to the main character's cheating boss. Mao slyly closed her eyes. She decided that if the guy was so worried about it, then let it be as he wanted. The girl pinched the guy sitting on the chair with displeasure. She asked him with displeasure, did he really drag her here so that she would just stand there and watch him soar in the clouds? The main character was unhappy with the girl's words. He grabbed her hand and shouted at her not to fool around. Mao asked the guy with displeasure why he had accused her of being sharp-tongued the last time they met at the Tan family hotel. The main character calmed down. He pulled his hand back and let go of the girl's hand. The girl came close to the main character and called him by name. Mao was wearing a top on the guy, she asked him with interest. Would it be enough for him to just look at her to understand how hot she was? The girl looked slyly at the main character and suggested that he try it himself. She leaned close to the guy's head and said that he could try it. The main character stood up and grabbed the girl from behind with his arm. Linhu looked sternly at his partner. He told her that in the previous book, he was simply given the task of playing this character. Mao fell silent. She looked at the guy for a long time and carefully before continuing to speak. Mao looked at the protagonist very slyly and attentively. She said that she would not cherish any blind man who dared to part with her. The girl slyly whispered in the guy's ear that now there was only him and her. She slyly asked her partner if he knew what they were doing now. Linhu asked his partner with great excitement what all this was called. The main character felt his girlfriend next to him. He realized that he was lost and no one could stand it. The guy couldn't understand why the girl was rubbing herself against him. He decided that the book could very soon turn into forbidden reading for adults. Mao threw the main character onto the bed with a sharp movement. She told him that all this is called a lonely man and a lonely woman. Linhu was lying on the bed. He looked at his girlfriend with great excitement. She was on top. Mao slyly rushed at the guy and said that he was Mount Ushin and she was a rain cloud. Linhu frightenedly reminded the girl that there is a proverb that says that he who plays with fire will burn himself. The main character grabbed the girl's face with his hands. He warned her that if she continued like this, she would regret it later. Mao pulled the belt off the guy. She angrily told him to worry about it himself. The girl sat on top of the main character on the bed. She thought that in this book she was just a random passerby, Nin, and is a son-in-law in someone else's family without any harem. Mao looked at the guy slyly and touched him with her hand. She told him in a sly voice that he was very innocent. Linhu turned the girl over onto her back and lay on top. He slyly told her to blame herself. The main character threw off the rest of his clothes onto the floor. He was on the bed. Mao looked at her friend with displeasure. She asked him, has he really decided to make all his fantasies come true? The main character was lying on the bed with his body naked. He told the girl in a joyful voice that he would now show her what the true unity of knowledge and action means. Mao looked at the main character with great interest. She waited to see what he would do. She laughed. She asked the boy to show her how much of a master he could be of the unity of the banner in action. The main character was lying next to his girlfriend on the bed. There were remains of clothes on the floor. Linhu told his girlfriend in a tired voice that she was simply not human. Ma opened her eyes and asked the guy what time it was. Mao looked at the guy slyly and with a smile. She prepared to get up. Mao sat on top of the main character on the bed and put on her outerwear. She said in a sly voice that it was time to go to the drunk immortal. Everyone would be waiting for them there. Linhu had kiss marks on his body. He was about to meet the main character of the book. His legs were shaking and his back was scratched. The girl turned to the side. She looked at the main character with displeasure. Mao angrily shouted at her friend to get up as soon as possible. Linhu sat up on the bed. He shouted at his partner that he was getting up already. The main character and his companion arrived at a place called the Drunken Immortal. The waiter smiled at the guests and said that the owners had already gathered. The two of them arrived just in time. Linhu and his companion opened the door to the room and prepared to go inside. Inside one of the halls sat two girls near the table. They looked attentively at the guests. The bride looked at the main character with great excitement. She quietly whispered his name. Linhu was very scared because a married woman looked at him with such attention. The main character was very scared. He realized that the girl could see him and suspect her of cheating. Mao was very happy when she saw her worried friend. At the table sat Linhu Feng's husband. Next to him sat a woman named Van. At the head of the table was Elder Su. On one side of the table sat the young parents of the girl, Su Huining. At the table next to her mother sat a girl named Su. She glanced to the side with excitement. The main character looked at the guests with a smile and apologized to them for being late. The hairdryer told the guy in a displeased voice not to stand there like a pillar and to sit down even if he was late. One of the guests shouted for Uncle Linhu not to scold the main character too harshly. It was just a simple family dinner. At this time, someone's footsteps were heard from the side. The guy entered the room. The main character of the book, Nin, entered the room. He was wearing festive clothes. The protagonist turned around and was surprised when he realized that Ning Yi was standing next to him. This guy was soon to become the future bigwig of the Sanzhou trading world. Nin was the last of the Nin line 20 years ago. A fire destroyed the wealthy Nin house to the ground. When Ning grew up, Elder Su found him and arranged an engagement for him with a girl. As a result, the boy became the son-in-law of the Su family. The young guy folded his hands and greeted the main character. Nin bowed to the main character and told him that she and Nin had told him about him, that he had taken care of her since early childhood. Lingu turned to the side. He listened very carefully to his partner's story. The main character smiled and told the guy that he shouldn't have said such words. According to the plot, Nin was also transported into the book's plot from the modern world. Linhu looked closely at the character and did not understand what kind of modern world this boss came from. Nin told the protagonist with a smile that they had specially arranged this modest level with wine so that he would not have any grudges against the Su family. The main character realized with fear that this character had come to the banquet specifically to test him. The protagonist guessed that Ning wanted to know if he still had a crush on Su. The groom also wanted to know if the Linhu family had a crush on Su. The main character suddenly laughed very loudly and cheerfully to himself. Linhu sternly replied to his partner that he had no hard feelings towards the girl. The main character explained to the guy that he was an ideal couple with Su. The main character hugged the groom. He explained to him that earlier he had a stomachache and did not show up for the wedding. Linhu explained to his partner with confidence in his voice that there was only pure friendship between him and the girl Su. Nin was very surprised when he heard such words from his partner. He looked piercingly ahead. The groom looked carefully in front of him. He said in an excited voice that it all looked as if a terminally ill person had jumped out of bed. The main character said in a dissatisfied voice that he himself turned out to be a clown. The main character and the guy very happily bumped hands. Su excitedly asked her cousin if she understood what the guys were talking about. The girl waved her hand. She answered the bride that it was impossible to say yet. Nin reached out and grabbed the protagonist's hand. He wanted to pull him to the side. Nin pulled the surprised guy by the hand into the next room. He apologized to the guests. The people at the table were sitting very surprised. The guy waved his hand at them goodbye. The main character and his companion went out into the yard of the drunk immortal. There was a huge wooden wheel on a small pond. Both guys stood silently opposite each other. No one dared to speak first. Nin told his partner how he became a ghost. A guy with a college education died in an alley when he went out at night to get a snack. The main character reached out to the ground to pick up a small leaf of grass. He told his partner that he understood his pain. Linhu chewed the grass in his mouth thoughtfully. He told his partner that he had been killed by a falling billboard while waiting for a friend from the internet. Nin was sitting on Earth. He briefly told the protagonist his story in the new world. Linhu told his new friend that he got into the book along with the system for villains. He always appears as an antagonist. Nin looked at his partner with great attention and shouted that it sounded cool. If the main character knows the entire plot in advance, it's the same as if he had a walkthrough of the game in his hands. The main character told his partner that he would first destroy the entire Linhu family and then destroy him too. Two characters sat sadly and silently on the ground. A large wooden wheel was spinning behind them. The main character asked his partner with excitement, did he really want to finish him off? Nin answered the guy with a smile that he considered him a great villain and was expecting a cheat bonus from him. Linhu thoughtfully told his partner that with the way things were going, he didn't look like a villain at all. Suddenly, the main character had a hunch. He said, in fear that this was why his system had failed. Nin thought about it. He said that if you think about it that way, then the real villain could be someone else. The main character sat quietly and chewed a small stalk of grass. His new acquaintance looked away thoughtfully. The guests continued to sit inside the drunk immortal. The bride said discontentedly that the two guys still hadn't returned. Sue got up from the table. She told the guests that she would now go outside and see what was there. The girl went outside. She saw the main character sitting near the pond. Sue looked ahead. She thought with excitement that a showdown had begun between the guys. The bride came up behind the frightened groom and abruptly put her hand on his shoulder. The girl turned around with displeasure at the main character and asked, "What does he even want?" Nin and stood next to her. Sue shouted at the protagonist with displeasure that she had already married Ning and he shouldn't cling to it. The groom calmly told the girl that he had just met Linghu. This guy had no romantic feelings for her. The main character smiled broadly at the girl. He explained to her that it was all just a misunderstanding. Sue, I couldn't believe that the guys talked to each other for 10 minutes and found out everything about each other. She decided that the main character had intimidated her fiancé. Nin explained to his partner with great excitement that the main character had not made any threats to him. The main character swore to the girl that he never had any dirty thoughts towards her. The protagonist thought to himself that there was no way to know for sure whether the real Linghu had feelings for the girl. Sue looked at the guy with distrust. She sternly asked him, "Is this really all true?" The main character assured the girl that she had found a worthy man for herself and he was happy for her. After this, Linhu approached his new acquaintance from behind and prepared to hit him on the shoulder. The main character hugged the groom. He told the girl with a smile that he asked Nin to treat her well too. The delighted Nin smiled broadly at the girl and confirmed to her that everything was exactly like that. Sue looked ahead at the guys with a very distrustful look. Nin hugged his surprised bride from behind and invited her to return to the table as soon as possible. Nin turned to the main character. He gestured to him to be silent. Linhu bowed in relief to his new acquaintance. He thought that he had made an alliance with the boss and therefore would not be finished off. The man stood next to the woman near the table with a glass. He told her that they were drinking wine and eating snacks. The door opened and a girl entered the room with two guys. The old man looked sternly at the girl. He told her that he wanted to talk to her. The grandfather looked slyly at his granddaughter. He asked if the boys had fought on the street. The old man took a green cup with a drink in his hands. He decided to talk to the man. The elder held a cup of tea in his hands. He told the guest that he had no other choice in life but to dump the entire burden of the Su family on the shoulders of the girl. The old man asked his partner how the eldest son of the main Lingu branch could become a son-in-law in the Su house. Fen was surprised and looked at the old man. He became interested in his words. The man raised the cup in front of him. He said that the girl was very capable. Together with her, the family would have a great future. At this time, the woman on the side looked very closely at the Mao girl. Suddenly, the woman looked at the guest very slyly and winked at her. Mao was very surprised. She did not understand why the woman winked at her. The main character stood to the side. He watched attentively as the old man talked to the man. Linhu looked at the man carefully. He couldn't believe that in front of him was the same person who had scolded the Su family the most yesterday. The old man stood and continued to talk to the man. The other guests watched them from the side. The main character was standing next to his girlfriend. She turned around and glanced at him furtively. The old man very happily told the man that this dinner was simply gorgeous. Nin approached the main character from the side. He told him with excitement to walk more slowly. Nin suggested that his new acquaintance meet in a couple of days. They would discuss together what to do next. Linghu smiled slyly at his partner and said that he agreed. The main character was standing with a woman on the street. They saw someone standing near the window inside the establishment. Mao looked out of the window. She slyly showed her friend with a gesture that she would call him. Linghu was scared because the girl was so frank with him. His parents were near him. The mother grabbed the main character by the ear and shouted at him to get into the cart with her. The man and woman sat inside the building with their eyes closed. Fen suddenly opened his eyes and looked closely at the main character. The man told the surprised master that things had gone very far and asked him for a hint. Linghu looked at the guest in great surprise. The woman swung and hit the guy on the head. She shouted that the man had not yet recovered from his conversation with his grandfather and was continuing to play his role. Fen calmed the woman down. He told her that she couldn't be so rude to the master. Van angrily answered her partner that her son couldn't be the master. The man looked piercingly ahead of him. He shouted that the masters of the secret of heaven must not be revealed. The main character looked closely at his father. He realized that he still hadn't moved away from his role. Linhu was lying on his bed in his room. He had already called his system 3 times, but it did not answer him. The guy got up from the bed and looked ahead with displeasure. He decided that he had knocked off the main line of the story. Without the help of the system, he could not calmly move forward. At this moment, a loud cry of a baby was heard from the side. Someone shouted that the lady had given birth. Linhu remembered with great excitement that Mrs. Chenyan was supposed to give birth to a child according to the script. The completely exhausted guy fell onto the bed and closed his eyes. After a short pause, the guy rose from the bed. He told himself that things were bad. The main character jumped out of bed and prepared to run to the next room. He remembered that, according to the script, the little girl was strangled by her midwife mother after birth. After the child's death, the mother grieved, and after that, she lay down so that she could not get up. The main character ran out into the corridor and saw an old woman carrying a small child. There was very little time left before the girl was strangled. The main character stood in the hallway and watched the midwife carefully. If the child had died, the imperial family would have ended up quarreling with Lingu. Lingu thought to himself with great excitement that the child must not die under any circumstances now. The main character looked closely at the old woman on the evening street. She looked around suspiciously. The little child was sleeping in the midwife's arms. She looked at him carefully. The old woman looked angrily at the little child and shouted that she would strangle him now. Suddenly, the attacker heard some noise from the side. Someone was approaching her. The old woman got angry. She turned around and asked with displeasure who had come up to her. The main character swung his leg and prepared to hit the midwife. The old woman suddenly dropped the child from her arms. From the blow, she began to move back. Linhu stretched out his hands forward. He managed to catch the falling child with them. The main character held a small and sleeping girl in his arms. Linhu sternly pointed at the old woman with his hand and asked where she had sneaked off to at night with the child in her arms. The midwife looked angrily at the guy. He didn't understand why the young gentleman had started to sort things out with children. The old woman calmly explained to the guy that he had misunderstood her. She asked him to give her the child. Linhu looked angrily at the midwife and asked with a smile, "Could it be that he misunderstood her?" The midwife told the boy in a sly voice that the child in his arms wasn't even crying. A silent child is a bad sign. The old woman happily thought that if the child died in the protagonist's arms, then it would not be her concern. The main character held the child in his arms. He told his partner sternly that even if the girl wasn't breathing, he had to say goodbye to her. The guy took the girl by the back leg and turned her upside down. Linhu hit the child from behind with his hand. He demanded that the girl scream. The main character continued to beat the child. He told himself that all this should definitely work. The old woman looked at the guy in fear and shouted that he was crazy. The midwife turned sharply and ran to the side. She shouted that if the child did not survive, it would be the young master's fault. The main character was left alone with a little girl. He carefully held her in his arms. The boy touched the girl's legs with his finger. He wanted her to wake up. Suddenly, the baby started to squeal. Linhu looked at the little girl in surprise. He happily shouted that he finally got to use the TV series he watched with his mother. The main character stood near Mrs. Chenyan's delivery room. 2 girls stood near the doors. The maid came up to the young master. She told him that he could not come in there. The main character, holding a girl in his arms, explained that he brought the child so that the mother could look at him. The maid said excitedly that the young master must be crazy. Another girl said in a sad voice that Mrs. Chenyang was heartbroken over the loss of her child. The guy came and wanted to make things even worse for the woman. The main character closed his eyes in displeasure. He realized that the maids did not want to let him inside. Linhu, with a girl in his arms, pushed 2 girls aside. He shouted for them to not block his way. The main character went inside the house. He saw a very upset woman there. Uncle came up and asked his nephew what he was doing. Lingu stood next to him with a child in his arms. The main character held the child out to his mother in his arms. She looked at him in surprise. The woman didn't understand anything. She held out the little girl to her. The husband hugged his wife and said that if her child was missing, she could give birth to another one later. Linhu was very unhappy that his uncle said that the child had died. The man angrily explained to the protagonist that Chenyan was already heartbroken, and he was still making it worse. The woman turned around with tears in her eyes and asked the guy with displeasure, what was he planning anyway? Linhu was unpleasantly surprised that the mother believed the midwife's words about her daughter's death. The woman was holding a child in her arms. She decided to take a closer look at him. Linhu stood to the side and watched her. The mother began to unwrap her wrapped daughter. The main character told the woman that she could look at everything herself. The little girl was alive. She looked at her mother very frightened. The woman was very shocked when she realized that she was holding a living child in her arms. The mother held the little girl in her arms. She told her husband with a joyful voice that her child was alive. The man was amazed. He remembered that the midwife had clearly said that the child was no longer breathing. The husband turned to Zhenya. He told her that she had begun to see hallucinations out of grief. The woman told her husband in a joyful voice that her child was alive, although the midwife had called him dead. The mother thought about it. She realized that the midwife clearly had something not quite right in her mind. Linhu stood in the room and silently looked at the parents with the child. He was glad that everything finally got through to the mother. The man became agitated and stretched his hands forward, as if trying to reach out toward the child. The woman suddenly reached out her hand to her husband and tried to push him aside. The mother hugged the girl. She sternly told her husband that she would not let him touch the child. The man got angry. He looked at his wife very displeasedly and silently. The uncle turned to the side and looked at his nephew with great hatred. The husband calmed down and told his wife that he would leave now and would return tomorrow morning to visit her. The man turned around and prepared to go outside. He was very irritated. The owner went outside very dissatisfied with the midwife's actions. The man was walking down the street. He walked quickly towards his office. In his office, Linhu Gang sat down at his desk and began to write some message with a brush. The man wrote in a letter that the main character had ruined everything and the plan had failed. After that, he decided to send this message along with the dove. The man swung his hand and launched a dove into the night sky. The bird flew in and landed on the windowsill. The stranger extended his hand to the dove and pulled out a message from the bird's paw. The hooded stranger read the letter. He said in a dissatisfied voice that they would have to find another way. The main character stood next to the woman's bed. He told her that the child was okay and that he would leave too. The guy headed towards the exit. The mother sat on the bed and silently looked ahead. Linhu stopped and glanced furtively at the woman. He turned his head slightly. The woman sat motionless on the bed. She held her small child in her arms. The hostess turned to the side. She saw Linhu walking away from her and heading towards the exit. The main character was walking down the corridor. Suddenly, something on the side caught his attention. Linhu stopped near the window. He noticed someone sitting in the next room. Tian was sitting near the table. He was holding a brush in his hands and drawing something. At this time, the door opened and a woman named Xiao Taohong ran in. She shouted to the guy that she had prepared soup for him. Tian, without turning around, told his aunt to put the food down. He was busy rewriting the passage. Xiao turned around and told the guy to clear everything off the table and put the sweets first. The girl came up and took the brush from the guy's hand. Tian reached for it with displeasure. The main character came close to the window and looked carefully inside the room. The main character watched attentively through the window as the woman talked to the guy. He realized that she wanted to raise the guy as a worthless party animal, fit only for entertainment. Tian looked around carefully and excitedly. He wanted to find his brother. The guy turned around and looked closely at the woman. He realized that she had such plans. Xiao looked at the guy with a sly and attentive gaze. She realized that he was melting with affection again. The woman came up to Tian and put her hand on his face. She said that his eyes were red from lack of sleep. Tian felt unwell. He did not like the woman's feigned concern. The main character stood near the window with his eyes closed. He listened attentively to what was happening inside. Linhu stood near the window. He heard that the boy wanted to tell his aunt why he began to study so hard. The main character looked through the window into the house attentively and with excitement. He was interested in Tian's story. Tian excitedly told his partner that he had dreamed of the immortal, who told him that he was his father's only son. In this life, in his dream, the guy drank and partied and squandered his entire fortune. Then he sold Xiao to a brothel. The guy excitedly told his frightened aunt that it was all just a dream and it shouldn't come true. Xiao apologetically told the guy that she was not encouraging him to party. She was just concerned about his health. The woman was very excited. She tried to at least force a smile. Xiao turned around and headed towards the exit. She shouted to the people in the room that she was leaving. Xiao headed towards the exit of the building. She felt very angry. Tian ran to the window and looked out. He asked the protagonist how he did. Linhu looked at his brother happily. Linhu happily raised his finger and praised his brother. He didn't understand how Tian knew that he was outside the window. A couple of days later, the main character happily looked ahead and saw a system window. Linhu was very happy that his system was finally back. The main character excitedly told the system that while it was gone, he had implemented the ideas of modern clothing stores and raised his shop to the skies. Still, his soul was uneasy. At this time, a stranger in long clothes entered the room. Lin looked carefully at the system window. He was a minor villain in the plot, but the real villain was still unknown. An unfamiliar woman came up to the guy from the side and called him by name. Linhu turned around and asked his partner with displeasure, "Who was she?" The woman with the child in her arms took off the hood from her head. The guy asked Mrs. Chenyan in surprise why she was dressed like that. The woman fell to her knees in front of the guy. If he hadn't helped her that night, she would have lost the child forever. The protagonist helped the woman get back on her feet. He reminded her that they were one family and did not need such ceremonies. Linhu happily noted to himself that his aunt was very attractive. He did not understand why her uncle left her for his mistress. The woman was very angry when she realized that Ghana had a mistress on the side. The main character asked his aunt with great excitement if everything was okay with her. She was shaking violently. The woman looked at her daughter. She realized that the midwife wanted to steal her child. Gan would get rid of her and her daughter and make room for his mistress. The main character thought to himself that if he told the woman the whole truth, she would die of grief. The aunt looked at the guy carefully. She said that at the first opportunity she would repay him for his kindness. Linhu watched silently as the woman headed for the exit. He decided that he had said something wrong to her. Mrs. Chenyan left the building and walked down the stairs. The woman at the entrance asked the maid Xiao Kui if she remembered her words from yesterday. Xiao Kui came up to the woman's side and said that she remembered everything. She would keep a close eye on the man and find out where he was hiding his mistress. Chenyan walked up to her carriage and prepared to get inside. The woman in the carriage ordered her coachman to drive to the imperial palace. Inside the imperial palace, in the Changning Hall, the princess sat with incense around her. The maid helped her mistress decorate her hair. She gave her all sorts of compliments. The princess reached out her hand and touched the flower above her head. She smiled happily. Slug ran into the room. He shouted to the princess in a frightened voice that Mrs. Chenyan had come to see her. There was a crowd of people near the entrance to the building. The main character came up and looked closely at the girls. Linhu, standing near the entrance to the palace, heard Lady Chenyan asking for an audience with the princess. The maids in red dresses greeted the guest. They told him that he could choose the goods to his taste. Linhu waved his hand at the girls. He thought to himself with admiration that, while reading in the book, he did not feel that the effect would be stunning in real life. Two maids came up from the side and brought a luxurious outfit to the guest. The main character shyly waved his hand at the maids and said that this color was too bright for him. The girls rushed to the guy from the side. They persistently began to demand that he try on the clothes. The main character came to the door. He said to himself in a sly voice that he would find out from Nin where he could find so many sweet and daring girls. Linhu stood near the door. He realized with great excitement that there was someone inside the room. The main character suddenly rushed forward into the room. He asked in fear, "Who was there?" The girl threw a towel on the guy's face. She slyly asked him, what kind of sweet and sassy girlfriends did he want? The main character entered the room. He asked the girl with great excitement what she was doing there. Xiao stood in a bright award. She looked slyly at her friend. She fell into the chair. She looked slyly at the guy and asked what he thought. Linhu was still standing with a towel on his head. He looked at the girl with displeasure and asked what she was up to again. Xiu stretched her leg forward. She said to the guy with displeasure that he had not let her know about himself in all these days. The girl swung her leg and softly hit the guy. She sternly told him that he asked for it. The main character looked at his girlfriend with a piercing gaze and extended his hands to her. Linhu grabbed Xiao in his arms. She smiled at him, very pleased. The main character suddenly pulled the girl close to him and kissed her. Linhu looked slyly at his girlfriend and asked how she was going to punish him today. Xiao asked the guy with a smile. Is he really afraid? The main character hugged the girl on the chair. She joyfully shouted to him that she was scared to death. At this time, someone entered the room and loudly called the main character. The guy turned around irritably. His girlfriend was having fun. Linhu straightened his clothes and went outside. He wondered who had come to see him. Nin came up and put his hand on the main character's shoulder. He invited him to watch the spectacle. The main character didn't want to go forward. He asked the guy, did he hire a theater troupe? He happily shouted to his partner that someone was causing trouble near the entrance. The main character could not understand why his friend was cheerful when there was a riot on his own territory. She stood in the square opposite the guy. She angrily told him that she didn't want Nina and shouldn't take him now. The guy named Yu was the young master of the Murong family. He smiled and told the girl that she was angry because of shame. The guy told the girl with a smile that she played hard to get when he wanted to marry her. Now she married some poor guy. The main character told his companion in a sly voice that Yuya's type was very similar to him. The main character thoughtfully realized that according to the script, he had been wagging his tongue against the girl Sue all the time. Yu seemed to be repeating his lines completely. Nin was very unhappy. He decided to beat up the guy in the square because he swore at the girl. The main character decided to stop his friend and grabbed him by the clothes with his hands. He explained that Yu can't be a rival for the girl. Sue looked sternly at her partner. She told him that if Nin is a beggar, then who is he himself? The girl looked angrily at the guy and said that he was a pot-bellied teapot with a raised spout. The people around laughed very cheerfully. They imagined Yuya as a teapot. The main character told his friend that his wife was very smart. Yu burned to the spot with shame. Ning turned around and proudly told his friend that his wife was the best. Linghu thought to himself, dissatisfied that he was tired of the brains in love. Yu got angry. He pointed his hand at the girl and shouted that he only wanted to become related to her out of respect for her family. The main character looked carefully ahead. He noticed something exciting. Linhu realized with great excitement and understood that the system was automatically correcting the deviations in the plot. Due to the appearance of the main character, the role of Lingu now passed to the guy Yu, who had a similar crew. Yu continued waving his hands in front of the girl in the middle of the street. He shouted that Sue didn't know where her place was. The guy was getting angrier and angrier. He shouted at the girl that she was very impudent. Linhu decided to stop his friend and shouted at Ning to stop getting excited. Nin ran up from the side and grabbed the very surprised Yuya by the arm and twisted it to the side. Nin ran up from behind and sharply twisted Yuya's arm to the side. The guy screamed loudly. A group of guards ran up from the side and shouted that the young gentleman needed to be protected. The main character suddenly extended his hand to the side. He stopped the fighters who ran up to him. Yu turned around and asked Yu with displeasure why he dared to raise his hand against him. Nin angrily shouted at the guy to watch his words. Behind him was a happy Sue. Yu turned around and walked away with his guards. He shouted to the guy and the girl that they would still remember him. People began to leave the square. Some passersby said that Mr. Mujun wanted to steal a chicken, and he himself was left without rice. The guy thought very hard when he remembered the phrase about Lingu Khan wanting to steal a chicken, but he himself was left without rice. The protagonist thought with excitement and realized that the real villain in the book could be the young master Mujin. Linghu looked away with great displeasure and attention. He decided that the villain could be someone else. The main character felt to himself that after he thought about it, the atmosphere immediately became creepy. Linghu turned to the side and noticed someone approaching him from the side. The girl suddenly approached her friend from the side and grabbed him with her hand. Linghu turned to his girlfriend. He asked excitedly when she managed to come over. Mao worriedly told her friend that something was wrong with Nin, and she decided that this guy used a female self-defense technique against Yuya. Linghu looked after his friend Ning and his wife as they left. He thoughtfully told his girlfriend that she was probably mistaken. Mao glanced slyly to the side. She said that her son-in-law was very good at taking care of his wife. Linghu told his girlfriend in an apologetic voice that he was rude and did not know how to appreciate tenderness. He could only work hard. Mao angrily pushed her friend away with her hand. She shouted at him that he was playing pranks. The girl stepped aside. She shouted to the guy on the go that she didn't want to talk to him. Linghu thought to himself that Ning was the character of this book and the hero that the author created. The main character realized that he was an outsider who got into this book. In the original novel, there was a villain with a name, a surname, and his own role. Linghu looked after his friend Mao as she left. He didn't understand how she got here at all. Half a day later, the main character carefully looked through the door into the house. Linghu pulled the girl by the hand. He shouted that there was no one inside and she should quickly go into the house with him. Mao, near the entrance to the house, asked the guy discontentedly, "Why do they need to sneak like a thief?" A man stood to the side with a woman and watched everything closely. Van laughed slyly and said that the guy was a good guy. He didn't succeed with the Su family, so he latched onto Mao. Fen proudly told his wife the details about the Mao family. The girl was the old general's granddaughter. The man sternly reminded his wife that their family was on the side of the crown prince. If their son became close to the granddaughter of the second prince's confidant, it was unclear how the crown prince would view it. The woman told her husband that he was panicking in vain. The crown prince is wise and merciful. He will not be so petty as he is. Fen looked angrily ahead and told his wife that she had female short-sightedness. Wang happily told her husband that Mrs. Chenyan is now healthy. She wants to hold a feast to celebrate the baby's first month. The man looked thoughtfully to the side and said that the third uncle was also not a simple man. Wang answered her husband that if the third uncle quarreled with Mrs. Chenyan, then she would not be on the uncle's side. The excited maid ran into the room. The mistress asked the girl if there was any news. The girl told the woman with great excitement that she had found out everything. The maid told her mistress that she had found where her husband's mistress lived. The maid ran up to her mistress and picked her up. She asked if she was all right. Chenyan found the strength in himself and very sharply grabbed the girl by the hand. The lady with the child in her arms sternly demanded that the maid tell her other news. The girl said in a sad voice that the man's mistress had recently given birth to a daughter on the same day as Chenyan. The lady excitedly asked the maid what was so surprising. The girl told the lady that her husband wanted to bring a mistress into the house as his legal wife. The lady laughed loudly. She understood all the evil plans of her husband. The woman said in an angry voice that her husband wanted to bring his mistress into the house as his legal wife, and that he personally wanted her dead. The lady looked angrily ahead. She realized how criminal her husband was. The woman stood near the window with a child in her arms. Thanks to the main character, she learned the truth about her husband. She will remember this debt. The girl sat inside the house discontentedly. She demanded that the guy explain everything to her quickly. The main character extended his hand to his girlfriend from behind. He shouted excitedly to her not to leave. Lingu excitedly told his girlfriend that he wanted to ask her something. Mao demanded that the guy tell her everything. The main character asked the girl how she got into this book and what special task she was given. Mao shouted excitedly to her partner that nothing like that had happened. The protagonist sternly asked the girl if there were any secret plot spoilers. Perhaps the system contacted her. The partner told the guy with displeasure that she ended up there just after a flash of white light. The main character was deep in thought. He realized that this plot was not following a template at all. Linghu asked the girl in surprise, "Why did she come here and not Xiaochuran?" Mao told the guy with displeasure that he was thinking about another woman. She pointed her finger at him angrily. The main character explained to his partner that he just wanted to find out everything. Mao explained to the guy in a stern and categorical voice that she had not seen any Xiao. Mao suddenly smiled slyly to herself. The guy asked her what she remembered. The girl excitedly told the protagonist that the current crown prince's sister was called Xiao Churan. The woman asked the servant with interest, "Did the boy Linghu really help Mrs. Chenyan?" The boy answered the lady that everything was exactly so. Xiao smiled happily to herself. She said that she would be able to see the protagonist again. Inside the big house, the celebration of the baby's first month was taking place. The guests entered Mrs. Chenyan's room with the child and congratulated her. Wang approached Mrs. Chenyan with a smile and said that they had a holiday today. Many guests had gathered. Van approached the woman and sternly asked, "Where is the third brother?" The people outside were already starting to worry. The woman sat on a chair and looked at the child attentively. She said that she absolutely did not care whether her husband was alive or dead. One of the guests shouted that it was already almost noon. He asked the lady, "Where is her husband?" The owner appeared in the house. He quickly ran along the corridor between the guests. The wife turned around in her chair and asked her husband with displeasure, "Where the hell had he been?" The owner put a small box on the table. He was choosing a gift for his daughter. The lady looked at her husband with displeasure. She didn't like that he hadn't chosen a gift for their daughter earlier. The man opened the box with the jewelry. He told his wife with a smile that he had chosen something better for their girl. Chenyan looked at her hand at the decoration. She told her husband in a dissatisfied voice that it was an unworthy gift. The husband told his wife in a sly voice that a silver gift would be just right for the girl. The woman threw the jewelry and the box on the floor in displeasure. She shouted that Mrs. Chenyan's daughter deserved a golden castle. The guests in the house were very amazed and surprised. They looked at the hostess in surprise. The man approached the woman. He told her excitedly that if necessary, he would buy a golden castle later. The wife, sitting in a chair, told her husband in a dissatisfied voice that he had already bought one gold lock for his mistress's daughter. The owner got angry when he heard such words from his wife. He looked at her with displeasure. The woman stood up with the child in her arms. She said to her husband with displeasure that she knew everything perfectly well. The hostess sternly bent down and advised her husband to hide his mistress and daughter better. She reminded him that the imperial family has its own ways. The owner jumped up and swung his hand. He was unhappy that his wife wanted to threaten him. The angry man swung his hand to hit his wife. At that moment, someone stopped him from behind. The servant at the door shouted in a loud voice that Her Highness the Long Princess was approaching. The guests inside became agitated. The owner turned away with displeasure. He did not understand what the Long Princess was doing here. Linhu was very alarmed and surprised when he realized that the Long Princess was about to arrive. A group of warriors in armor appeared near the entrance to the building. They lined up in a row. The servant shouted loudly to the people to move aside quickly. The maid stood behind him. A princess in a long blue dress entered the room. People from the side looked at her in surprise. The main character repeated to himself the conviction that the princess simply had the same name as his girlfriend. Linhu opened his eyes abruptly. He studied the girl who entered the room with a very attentive gaze. The main character noticed that the princess was very similar to his friend Xiao. The princess passed by the main character. She extended her hand to him and waved. The guests were surprised. One of them said excitedly that the long princess was acquainted with the young master of the Lingu family. The protagonist thought to himself, dissatisfied that the girl's appearance did not promise anything good. The main character felt a very strong fear. He realized that the character of the previous book Zhang Beishuan should appear soon. The guy grabbed his frightened girlfriend by the shoulders. He angrily asked her, "Is there anyone in this world named Zhang?" Mao answered with excitement that there was definitely no such character. The princess handed her mistress a small blanket. It had once been a gift from her mother. The lady with the child in her arms waved her hand to the princess and said that this was a very valuable gift. One of the guests said joyfully that the girl had received great favor from the tall princess. The child's future would be bright. The disgruntled man ran out into the street. He angrily shouted that when his daughter grows up, she will sit on his neck. The man launched a carrier pigeon. He promised the Vanyan's daughter in an angry voice that when he became rich and rose to prominence, he would win back all the best for her. The dove was flying over the estate. Suddenly, someone from the side hit it with a well-aimed shot. The maid in the green robe stood and watched as the wounded bird fell from a height. The girl took the letter from the killed pigeon in her hands and began to read it carefully. The maid came into the mistress's house. She leaned over and told her that her husband was secretly involved with His Highness the Second Prince. The main character stood inside the building. He studied the princess next to him with a very attentive gaze. The guest ran up to the princess and joyfully shouted that they were incredibly lucky to see her today. The hairdryer on the side shouted to the guest that she was the embodiment of wealth and grace. The astonished protagonist looked ahead. It was unbelievable to him that Xiao Zhuan could end up with the crown prince's sister. To him, it all seemed very phantasmagorical. Lingu thought slyly to himself that the system knows for sure that if he turns everything upside down, the plot of this story will not change. The protagonist stood thoughtfully in the luxurious hallway of the mansion. He thought sadly to himself that the Lingu family was doomed to fall. The protagonist, after a short reflection, realized that the princess was an ardent supporter of the prince. Lingu thought to himself with worry that, for the sake of saving the family, he couldn't get close to the long princess. The people around looked at the main character with great excitement and fear. Linhu sat down on a wooden chair and took a cup of tea. He decided to find some spell to finish off the second prince with lightning. The protagonist held a cup of tea in his hands. He decided to stage a rebellion to kill the second prince. Then no one would be able to harm the Linhu family. The guests in the house became agitated. They turned around with concern and looked at the main character. The mother ran up to her son in fear and asked, "What's wrong with him?" The main character ran to the side with excitement. He decided to really organize a rebellion and kill the enemy prince. The man and woman looked at each other in fear. Van decided to herself that something had happened to the little child. The escorts went out into the evening street. They said goodbye to the carriage of the long princess. The main character ran to the doors of the house and opened them. He decided to sleep and think about the details of the uprising tomorrow. The guy reached out his hands to the sheet and lifted it up. He prepared to fall onto his bed. The main character was very surprised when he realized that there was a princess lying under the blanket on his bed. Lingu reminded the uninvited guest in a frightened tone that her carriage had to leave. The princess sat up on the bed. She told the guy that she had cut through the wall of the mansion when her carriage left. Lingu sat down next to the girl. He asked her with concern if she was hearing something she shouldn't hear. Xiao asked the guy with interest. Is he really interested in whether she can hear his thoughts? The princess happily told her partner that she could hear all his thoughts. She learned about his plans for the rebellion and the murder of the second prince. Lingu explained to his partner that he just wanted to survive. This was his only humble wish. The girl put her hand on the guy's shoulder. She asked him why he didn't think of her when he came up with a bunch of plans. The princess suggested that the boys strike first. They could unite and protect the crown prince. The main character thought that the princess was surrounded by bloody whirlwinds. He didn't want to get involved in this. Xiao got out of bed. She said goodbye to the protagonist that he can think whatever he wants. The princess looked at the guy slyly. She said that her father, the emperor, could marry them. Lingu would not be able to go against it. The main character was very surprised when he heard such words from the princess. He was almost struck down. Linghu rushed to the girl on his knees. He asked her with excitement to think several times. Linghu was kneeling in front of the princess. He explained to her that they were just characters in the world of the book. Their feelings were the relationships of the characters in the book. Xiao listened to the guy silently and said nothing. The protagonist told the princess that they should be even. He suggested that she never talk about the wedding again. Linghu noticed with great surprise and fear how her tears began to drip onto his hand on the girl's body. The boy knelt down and watched in amazement as the princess cried silently. The main character ran up to the princess from the side. He asked excitedly why she was crying. The girl pushed the guy aside with her hand. He told her in fear that he had gone too far. The guy happily told his partner that she was an older relative to him. The main character came up to the girl from behind and said that she should have understood everything. Xiao answered the guy that he could say whatever he wanted. Xiao told the boy with tears in her eyes that he was planning to rebel and kill the second prince. The princess told the frightened protagonist that she would tell everything to her father, the emperor, tomorrow. As a result, the Linghu family would be executed. The girl explained to the frightened boy that her father, the emperor, would believe her even without proof. Xiao explained to the protagonist that she cried because he was such a good person and would soon die. The main character suddenly reached forward and grabbed the princess's hand. Linghu hugged the girl. He told her in a sly voice that he might want to think again about their marriage. The princess stretched out her arms forward and grabbed the guy's body tightly. Xiao looked closely at the guy and hugged him. She suggested that he do it now so that there would be no way back later. The main character began to mentally address the girl, Xiao Churan. He really wanted her to hear him. The protagonist turned his head to the side. He mentally told his partner that he belonged to Mao Qiyu. The protagonist mentally told the princess that he had already met General Mao Xun's granddaughter and had no intention of getting involved with other girls. Xiu swung her hand sharply and hit the guy in the face with all her might. The girl grabbed the guy by his clothes and sternly asked, "Did he really think he could choose anything?" Xiu threw her boyfriend aside onto the bed. The boy asked the girl with displeasure, why did she think she could punish him? The princess reminded the boy that the Mao family was on the second prince's side. She was the ruler's representative and had to punish him. The girl sat on top of the main character on the bed. The guy was very scared. The main character turned away from the princess with displeasure. He angrily asked her, "Does she really want to bite like a dog?" The princess unbuttoned her clothes from above. She told the guy in a sly voice that she was a fox. The main character was very scared when he saw that the girl reached out and grabbed him by the clothes. Xiao pulled the guy towards her. She sternly demanded that he kiss her. The main character kissed his partner. She screamed joyfully. Linghu suddenly rushed at the girl. He shouted loudly at her that she asked for it. The princess slyly rushed at the guy and said that she did not complain because he was very slow and weak. The main character stayed with his girlfriend on the bed for the night. The main character woke up the next morning with his girlfriend on the bed. There were a lot of clothes lying around. Linghu handed the princess a dress and said with a smile that he would help her get dressed. The girl extended her hand to the protagonist's face. She slyly told him that if she had known everything about him earlier, she would have taken him on a long time ago. The main character and his companion went out onto the steps. It was a bright day all around. The princess extended her hand to the guy. She smiled at him and told him not to see her off. "He did a pretty good job yesterday." The main character smiled slyly at the girl and cheerfully thanked her for her kindness. Xiao walked away a little. She wanted to remind the guy of something. The princess turned to the guy. She told him goodbye so that he would get ready quickly. It was necessary to finish what had not been finished before. Xiao suddenly jumped up above the building. She shouted goodbye to the guy that he should wait until she comes to marry him. The main character was left standing alone on the street. People appeared behind him. Fen turned to the side. He excitedly told his wife that something grand was about to begin. Van shouted in an excited voice that her son had met the princess. The man turned around and said thoughtfully to the girl that all these strange speeches of the guy worked. The partner asked her partner in surprise, "Can he really hear it too?" The people in the yard looked at each other in surprise. They all heard the main character's thoughts. Van said excitedly that she could hear her son's voice. She was glad that others could hear that voice too. The man answered the woman in a thoughtful voice that not all of them could hear the guy's thoughts. The man said in a thoughtful voice that when the third uncle was nearby, he did not react to the main character's thoughts. Feng said in a thoughtful voice that Linhu was a good boy. His thoughts were for the benefit of the family. Feng said in a thoughtful voice that the third uncle had recently quarreled with Mrs. Chenyang. Perhaps those people who act against the interests of the Linhu family cannot hear the thoughts of the protagonist. The man said in a thoughtful voice that for now, he only had guesses. They could check everything later. The girl looked around excitedly and told her companions that everything was decided. The owner of the estate was sitting in his house on a clear day. A carrier pigeon from Linghu flew into his window. The man carefully read the message from the dove. He learned that the Long Princess visited the Linghu manor. Perhaps she is familiar with the guy. The owner held the letter out to the candle on the table and began to burn it. The door to the office suddenly opened and an excited guy ran in. The second prince, named Xiao Chengzhe, shouted with a joyful voice that a true master of Baixuan can see everything in advance. Xiu excitedly told his partner that his general had indeed turned out to be a traitor. He had secretly defected to the crown prince. The owner listened attentively to the guest's story. Baixuan shouted joyfully that it was very good that the master had warned him. The owner, in a reasonable voice, told his partner that a commoner has no right to appropriate merits. The man told the guest that they had identified the spy thanks to the second prince's determination. The guest fell into a chair. He happily promised his partner that when they overthrew the crown prince, he would give him his sister as a wife. Xiao glanced slyly at his partner. He told him that he could take Mao's girlfriend home with him as a concubine. The master fell to his knees in a grateful bow. He thanked the second prince. Zhang glanced slyly ahead. He decided that he could manipulate the princes as he wished. Zhang Baixuan thought angrily to himself that he had come to this world and would not obey anyone. He decided that all women would belong to him, and in the future, the whole world. A servant entered the room. He brought a bundle with the emperor's decree. The protagonist fell to his knees. He had to accept the order from the messenger. The servant also brought a message for Zhang. The boy fell to his knees and said that he accepted the decree. The guest read the emperor's order from the parchment in a stern voice. The main character was very unpleasantly surprised when he heard the emperor's decree. He did not believe that all this was serious. Zhang got angry and slammed his hand on the table with all his might. He broke it into pieces. Xia was surprised to tell his angry partner that the protagonist had been given the gift of marriage to the Long Princess. Xiao was deep in thought. He didn't understand how a representative of the Linhu family, Olya, could marry his sister. Zhang looked ahead angrily. He said that the main character had pulled off some kind of trick. Zhang realized that in this world he met the same Linghu from the previous book. The guy put his hands on his head in fear. He shouted that Linghu was following him like a ghost. Xiao told his partner in a soothing voice that there was no need to rush. There was still time from the decree to the wedding. Zhang calmed down. He turned around carefully and asked what advice the second prince could give him. Xiao told his partner with a smile that in a couple of days, Hugh's favorite was holding a banquet with flower viewing. All the important dignitaries would be invited there. She slyly whispered to his partner a proposal to disgrace the protagonist at the banquet. Then the emperor father will never give Linhu to the protagonist. As a result, the marriage decree will be cancelled. A delighted Zhang shook his partner's hand and said that they would do just that. The girl Mao ran into the estate. She angrily shouted for the main character to come out. The servant told the guest in a displeased voice that she could not just barge into the Linghu estate. A princess came out into the courtyard from the side. She asked with displeasure, who was shouting there? Mao looked at the princess with displeasure and said that it was still too early for her to act as the mistress of this house. The girls looked at each other very angrily. They wanted to go to the main character and see which of them the guy would choose. The servant ran at full speed into the master's house. He brought him some news. Fen asked the boy with displeasure, why hadn't the Long Princess arrived yet? The servant excitedly told him that the Long Princess and Mao had rushed to the young master. The man and the girls were very surprised when they heard such news from the servant. The girls moved around the main character. They strictly demanded an answer from him as soon as possible. Miao and Xiao stood around the guy and demanded that he quickly choose one of them. Two girls ran up close to the guy and pressed their breasts against him. They continued to demand that he choose one of them. Sai sternly reminded her partner that her family was the second prince's supporter. If she defected to Linghu, her family would not approve. Mao glared at her partner. She shouted at her that her grandfather adored her. If she asked the old man to leave the second prince and stand behind the crown prince, he would agree in a heartbeat. The princess grabbed the main character by the hand. She reminded him that she was the crown prince's sister. She had an imperial decree about the wedding. The guy couldn't do anything against her. Mao grabbed the protagonist from behind with her hands. She angrily replied to the princess that her Mao family holds 500,000 heavy cavalry in their hands. The frightened protagonist abruptly pushed his girlfriends aside with his hands. He advised them to go to the dance hall and sort things out there. Suddenly, an idea came into the guy's head. He decided to ask his girlfriend. Linhu turned to the girl and asked excitedly how many soldiers she had mentioned. Mao repeated to the guy in fear what she had told him about 500,000 soldiers. The main character wanted to ask Mao something with great attention. Linhu was very excited when he heard about 500,000 soldiers. The main character looked slyly at the girl and said that with the help of 500,000 soldiers, they could become emperors themselves. The main character extended his hand forward. He repeated to himself with admiration the words about 500,000 soldiers. Linhu stretched out his hand to the side. He said that now he understood why the second prince could compete with the crown prince. Mao shook her finger angrily at her rival. She said that she would compete with Xiao. The princess slyly reminded her partner that in the previous book, she had an engagement with the main character. In this book, she has an imperial decree about the wedding with this guy. Mao very irritably shouted at her rival that she had had sex with the guy. Xiao glanced slyly at her partner and said that she also had intimacy with the main character. Both girls rushed at each other angrily. They grabbed each other's hands with hatred. The main character turned around abruptly and started running away. The princess asked the guy with displeasure, "Where is he running?" The girls sternly demanded that the guy explain himself to them right now. The main character turned to his partners in fear with his hands raised. He shouted at the girls that it was they who took his virginity. Mao suddenly ran up to the guy and grabbed him by the clothes. She pulled him towards her. The girl held her friend by his clothes. She told him that even if he violated the imperial decree on the wedding, 500,000 soldiers would help him. The princess got angry. She pointed angrily at her rival and said that this was too much. A servant entered the room with a bundle in his hand. He informed the people that the emperor's decree had arrived. The protagonist fell to his knees. He prepared to take another decree from the ruler. The messenger told the boy with a smile that the ruler had invited him to a flower viewing banquet. 2 days later, guests were gathering for a flower viewing banquet. A carriage with horses drove up to the entrance of the building. The main character opened the curtain on the side of the carriage and prepared to go out into the street. A system window appeared. It wanted to warn the owner about something. The main character was happy that the system appeared. The system triggered an alarm for the owner. The worried guy received a message about the intrusion. The main character was very scared by the alarm from the system. He grabbed his head with his hands. The servant led the horse into the room. He turned to the side and looked closely at the guy. The servant saw the boy lying on the ground. He called out to Mr. Lingu in fear. The main character came to his senses inside the house. He opened his eyes and looked carefully in front of him. The princess ran up to the guy on the bed in fear. She shouted to him that he had been unconscious for half an hour. Linhu turned around and asked the girl excitedly, "Why is he here?" Xiao told her guest that he lost consciousness in the carriage, and the coachman brought him here. A servant ran into the room and shouted to the princess that the second prince had arrived. Xiao turned around and asked the main character with excitement, "Should we let the guest in?" The main character was sitting on the bed. He explained to his partner that they couldn't let anyone see them in this bedroom. He decided to leave. The princess shouted back to the guy that she would drive away the uninvited guests. A young guy ran into the room. He angrily shouted at his sister that she hadn't even gotten married yet, but was already so ruthless. Zhang fell to his knees near the entrance and greeted the princess. The main character stood nearby. The main character looked closely at the guest at the entrance. He seemed very familiar to him. Xiao looked at the protagonist with interest and called him son-in-law. Linhu raised his hands in a conciliatory manner and said that the servant does not dare. Xiao turned to the side and told Zhang that he could get up from his knees. In front of his sister, he could be more free. Baixuan looked menacingly ahead. He thanked the second prince. The main character looked at the guy in front of him with great fear. He recognized him immediately. The main character was scared. He couldn't understand how Zhang Baixuan could get to this place. Linhu looked at Zhang in front of him carefully. He realized that the 3 characters from the previous book had migrated with him to the new book. There was no help from the system. The protagonist looked at the girl. He realized that she was also shocked that Zhang had sneaked into this world and become the second prince's advisor. She sat in a chair. He glanced slyly at his companion and invited him to sit down. Baixuan thanked the second prince for allowing him to sit down. Xiao looked slyly at his sister. He told her that she could choose her own groom. The second prince glanced at the protagonist. He explained to the boy that he couldn't hang around the princess without an official status. Because of this, the reputation of the Lingu family could suffer. The princess told her brother that the main character had lost consciousness. She brought him to her place so that he could rest. Xiao smiled and told the girl not to be so nervous. Xiao turned to the side and asked Master Baixuan to examine the protagonist. Zhang told the second prince that he would do everything. The princess rushed forward to protect her friend. She sternly asked Baixuan, "What is he planning?" Zhang asked the girl to move away. He wanted to examine the guy. Zhang looked sternly at the girl and reminded her that they were in ancient times. She couldn't just hide a man in her place. Xiao thought about it. She looked at the guy carefully and decided to listen to him. The main character said with a smile that he was ready to allow the master of Baixuan to check his pulse. He himself was interested in what he was sick with. The guy thought to himself that he was able to go through many reincarnations in books and collect artifacts. Lin Hu cunningly asked the princess what would happen if Master Baixuan could not cure his illness. She explained to her partner with a smile that if Zhao did not cure him, he would face prison or execution. The princess told her brother that Master Baixuan could check the protagonist's pulse. The main character quietly took out a small pill and prepared to swallow it. Lin Hu swallowed a special pill. It contained poison from a high magical world. In this reality, it could not be deciphered. The main character was interested in how Zhang would get out of it further. The princess sternly reminded her brother that a male official could only enter the inner palace with an imperial decree. Otherwise, only eunuchs could enter. The girl realized that she must now follow the rules of ancient times. Xiao looked to the side carefully. She asked her brother, "Is Master Baixuan really a eunuch?" The second prince looked at his sister carefully. He was very surprised by her question. The second prince happily told the girl that the main character's illness was urgent. He needed to be treated as soon as possible. Suddenly, the main character started coughing. He started bleeding. The girl on the side was scared. The main character started coughing blood. The guy jumped to his feet and looked closely at Linggu. The princess asked her friend with great excitement what had happened to him. Linggu shouted in a weakening voice that Master Zhang should quickly check his pulse. The girl looked closely at Baixuan and sternly asked why he was hesitating. The main character was lying on the bed and could not get up. Zhang was sitting on a chair next to him. The patient looked very bad. He thanked the master for his efforts. The protagonist thought to himself that the poison was very powerful. He also needed to urgently take the antidote. Zhang extended his hand and began to carefully feel the pulse on the patient's hand. Zhang concentrated and realized that the pulse on the patient's hand did not correspond to any known disease. Beiyusan looked closely at the protagonist's body. He decided that there was some rare poison inside him. The patient, with a weakening voice, asked the master for help. Zhang looked at the patient carefully and with fear, he realized that he could not help him. Baixuan bowed to the second prince and informed him that the protagonist would not be able to survive the night. Xiao was afraid that everything could happen so quickly. The princess ran up to the guy and angrily asked, "What did he say?" Zhang answered the girl that even the famous doctors of the country would not help the main character. The girl turned around carefully and looked at the main character on the bed. The main character lay motionless on the bed. There was bright sweat on his face. Xiu thought that her friend had used some strange magic. She didn't want to be left a widow. The girl angrily told the master that the main character asked him what would happen if he couldn't cure his illness. Zhang explained to his partner with a smile that, although he was a master of medicine, it didn't mean that he could cure any illness. The protagonist sat up in bed. He asked the master, "Is he really sure that he will die?" Zhang turned his back. He told the patient that he had an incurable disease. Zhang thought happily to himself that he had not yet begun to act, and the main character was already dying. Lin Hu found the strength to stand up. He called the doctor a charlatan. Zhang was displeased and amazed. He asked the patient again what he had said. The main character said in a confident voice that he would find a person who would cure him. Zhang looked sternly at the patient and said that he should return home and prepare for the funeral. The protagonist told the master that if he himself lived for 3 days, he would have to dance naked near the city gates. The main character knew everything very well about Zhang from the previous book. Baixuan was very talented and cunning. The main character told himself that he was already in a completely different book. Zhang angrily told the patient that after that night, he would burn paper on his grave every year. The main character happily rubbed his hand across his face. He smiled at himself. Linggu was sitting on the bed. He told the princess that he was tired and wanted to rest. The girl answered her friend that he could rest there peacefully. The princess told her brother that the main character could rest. The second prince agreed with the girl. The brother told the girl with a smile that today at the palace banquet there would be a prince from Qi. Xiao fell silent. She looked ahead with displeasure and did not answer her brother. Zhang bowed goodbye to his partners and prepared to leave. Zhang ran out of the room abruptly and quickly. He slammed the door behind him. The princess asked the protagonist with concern if he was okay. Lin Hu explained to his partner that he was fine. He had previously taken poison for himself to confuse the master. Xiao was scared. She excitedly shouted to her friend that he had taken a big risk. The main character took out a pill with an antidote and prepared to take it. Zhang swallowed the medicine. He said that in a moment the poison should be completely neutralized. The main character turned around and told the girl that she should take care of herself now. Linhu told his surprised partner that the prince from Qi had come for her. The protagonist said that the prince from Qi came to woo the former Princess Xiao. The girl said excitedly that her father, the emperor, left the choice of the groom to her. The main character explained to his partner that there was no prince from Qi before. According to the plot of the novel, Xiao will be married off precisely because of this prince. The main character explained to his partner that the strongest bonds between father and daughter are not so important in the face of enormous benefits. The girl asked her friend discontentedly, why didn't he tell her about the ending of the book's plot? Linhu explained to his partner that the plot of the book had changed a lot. Xiao jumped to her feet in anger. She shouted in a dissatisfied voice that she would not agree to this marriage. The main character reached out and grabbed the girl's hand. He warned her that they could be overheard. The main character warned the princess that now the second prince and the crown prince will fight to the death. There may be many spies in the palace, Xiao asked her partner displeasedly. What she should do now? The protagonist thoughtfully told the girl that he wanted to think about a plan. Xiao joyfully clapped her hands and shouted that she had an idea. The princess threw herself on the guy. She said that the wedding would definitely happen if she got pregnant. The main character grabbed the girl by the hand and angrily asked, "What kind of plan is this?" Xiao put her hand on the boy's head and said that she couldn't let him die. The princess reminded the guy that she could hear his thoughts perfectly well. He could criticize her and speak directly. The main character explained to his partner that because of her plan with the child, his entire family could be executed. Linhu explained to the princess that if she became pregnant, her relatives would find a way to make her lose the child. In the end, she would still marry wherever they told her. Xiao looked at the guy with displeasure and asked him what she should do now. The main character grabbed his girlfriend by the waist. He told her that if her brother took the throne, he would definitely not allow her to marry a foreigner. Xiao excitedly told the guy that he had just told her about the conspiracy and the seizure of power. The main character explained to his partner with a smile that the plot of this book was as tangled as a ball of thread. The main character told the girl that if Zhang seized power, she would become part of his harem. He suggested that the princess take power into her own hands. The girl thought and looked down in front of her. She called her friend by name. The main character looked at the girl attentively and with interest. He was waiting for what she would say. She looked at her friend slyly and demanded that he not dare to let her down. The main character remembered to himself that the girl Xiao loved strong guys. In the previous book, she fell in love with Zhan Beishuan. Linhu looked closely at the girl. He confidently thought to himself that in this book, he would definitely not let her down. The main thing is that he would not be forcibly thrown out of the plot. It was a bright day outside. The main character happily told the princess that the palace banquet would soon begin. The main character adjusted his clothes. He told the princess that the poison had already been neutralized in his body. It was time to go for wine and refreshments. The princess had to tell everyone that it was she who had cured the main character. Linhu turned to his girlfriend and demanded that she keep their conversation today a secret. He needed to check what was going on with Mao. The princess angrily pointed her hand to the side. She asked the guy with displeasure, "Is he really going to Mao again?" The main character excitedly recalled that Mao had 500,000 heavy cavalry. Xiao strictly demanded that the guy swear that he was going to his girlfriend only for the sake of the soldiers. The main character was very scared. He looked at the girl with great excitement. The girl threw the main character aside with a powerful blow. She explained to him that he would meet Mao later. The guy couldn't understand what she had in mind for him. Xiao untied her clothes and came close to her friend. The princess looked at the guy and promised that she would suck all the strength out of him. He would only be able to talk to Mao about business. The lying Linhu excitedly reminded his partner that the banquet was about to begin. The girl looked slyly at the guy. She promised that she would deprive him of all desires in an hour. The main character looked angrily at his girlfriend. He realized that she was playing unfairly with him. The second prince walked towards the stairs with the master. He asked Zhang, "Is the protagonist really sick?" Chang turned around and told his companion that the protagonist was absolutely sick. The master suddenly stopped. He began to recall the patient's behavior. His diagnosis could well have been wrong. Beishuan told the second prince with great excitement that there was something fishy going on here. Xiao asked the guy why he thought so. Zhang said thoughtfully that the main character was very cunning. If he started arguing with him, it meant that he had everything calculated. The second prince asked his partner in surprise what he was going to do. The master clenched his fist. He remembered the main character's words about 3 days. Therefore, Linhu should not live even 3 days now. Jiang said angrily that the main character must be finished off and that will be the end of it. The second prince climbed the stairs. He wished the master a crushing victory and laughed. Zhang promised his companion that he would not let him down. The guy stopped. He furtively and thoughtfully turned his head and glanced at his companion. The girl was lying on the bed. She looked slyly at her friend and said that he had just gotten dressed and was now denying it. The main character looked at the girl with displeasure and said that she used him. Now she has no right to slander him. Xiao reminded the guy that he is her fiancé and must serve her. The guy suddenly extended his hand forward. He reminded the girl that all this was in the previous book. He was no longer the same Ling Hu Han who had been at Xiao's beck and call. The princess looked at the guy slyly and attentively. She promised to make him hers. The main character turned away with displeasure. He told the girl that she wouldn't get him just like that. The guy thought to himself that the girl was in a new plot with a new character. The princess slyly told the guy that he doesn't have to whisper in his thoughts if he thinks she's hot. Lin Hu asked his partner with displeasure. What kind of thoughts is she listening to? She extended her hand to the protagonist's face and said that he could figure everything out himself. The princess stretched her hand towards the boy's body. She told him that he was crazy about her. Lin Hu stretched his hand towards the girl and grabbed her. The main character headed to the side. He decided to go to the banquet and find out details about Prince Qi. The princess waved after the guy and shouted for him not to rush away. People gathered inside the palace. A guy in blue clothes approached the arriving guest and bowed to him. Xiao looked at his guest with a smile and offered him a cup of drink. The prince looked closely at his younger brother and said that he had arrived very early. The prince happily drank the drink from the cup. He wished his friend health. Xiao supported his brother and also drained his cup completely to the bottom. Xiao told his relative that their little sister had decided to take a lover. The prince asked his partner with displeasure, "Where did he learn such gossip?" Xiao told his relative that the princess's lover was Ling Hu Han. The prince was deep in thought. Xiao's words touched him very deeply. She said in a cunning voice that the princess might just have a lover. It's time for her to get married. The guest turned around and asked his younger brother with displeasure what he wanted to say. Xiao slyly reminded his brother that today the emperor's father wanted to marry their sister to the Prince of Qi. If anyone found out about the girl's lover, then the emperor's punishment might fall on him too. The guest asked his brother with displeasure, "Is he really threatening him?" Xiao replied to his relative that he would not dare to threaten him. She said to his brother with a sly smile that he wanted to warn him. He didn't want him to suffer from a sudden misfortune. Xiao looked ahead happily. He shouted cheerfully that the lover had arrived. The prince fell silent. He stood and looked ahead with great displeasure. After a short pause, the guest clenched his fist and sat down at the table. Xiao turned to him from the side and looked at him attentively. The guest poured himself a drink into a cup. He told his brother that their sister knew what to do herself and there was no need to worry about it. Xiao looked at his brother with great interest and said that he should return to his place. Xiao turned around slyly and glanced at his relative. He told the prince that it was a pleasure to sit in his place. Xiao stood up from his seat and headed towards the exit. The prince stood behind him. The prince was very unhappy with the words he heard from his brother. The guy turned around and looked closely at the main character at the table. He realized that this guy was his sister's lover. The prince looked at the main character carefully. He thought that he didn't know about it. The protagonist realized that he had just been looked at by Xiao Chengqian. Lin Hu realized that he was on the verge of falling out of the plot of the book, so he had to be more careful. The protagonist carefully asked the system what instructions it had. He received no answer. Lin Hu realized with displeasure that he was just cannon fodder in the plot. He didn't know how he was supposed to compete with the main characters. The main character suddenly realized that he now had to fight against Ninja. But this guy turned out to be his friend. After some thought, Lin Hu realized that he would now have to fight against Zhang Beishuan. The protagonist remembered that the previous book ended abruptly. This means that in this novel he must fight against Zhang. A girl came up to the guy from the side and put her hand on his shoulder. She asked, "What was he thinking about?" The girl smiled slyly at the protagonist. She reminded him of the large number of heavy cavalry her grandfather had. She could enter this hall whenever she wanted. Mao sniffed the guy carefully. She asked why he smelled like someone else's perfume. Lin Hu explained to his partner with displeasure that he smelled like Xiao's perfume. Mao happily grabbed the guy by the clothes and asked, "Will he really not even pretend?" Zhang thought happily to himself that now the girl understood what a scoundrel the main character was. Zhang recalled his meetings with the girl. He thought to himself that he was always ready to become a reliable harbor for her. Mao asked her partner with excitement what level of relationship he was on with Xiao. Lin Hu calmly explained to his girlfriend that he had gone through the whole process with the princess. Mao was very surprised when she heard such words from the guy. Mao told the main character in a dissatisfied voice that he was choosing for himself the bride who did not look at him. The guy answered his partner that he had to submit to the will of the princess. The girl wiped away her tears. She asked the main character, "Did the princess really force him to marry her?" The guy felt tired from the question from his girlfriend. He exhaled very tiredly. The main character asked the girl with displeasure why they were both clinging to him so much. Mao explained to her partner that she really liked him. Lin Hu explained to the girl that they were all reincarnations, and no one knew if they would be able to see each other in the next book. Mao told the guy in a capricious voice that he should take responsibility for her. The main character poured a drink into a cup for him, love was a hassle, and women only hindered him from drawing his sword. She was unhappy because the guy didn't want to take responsibility. The main character handed the cup to his girlfriend. He explained to her that his role in this book was cannon fodder. Mao answered the guy with fear that she understood him. She also read web novels. The girl calmly drank a drink from a cup. The main character told his partner that if he suddenly died, there would be no one to answer for her. The girl cunningly offered the main character to give him 500,000 cavalry as a dowry. Lin Hu asked his girlfriend if her grandfather would agree to such an offer. She demanded that the protagonist abandon Xiao Churan. In return, she promised to talk to her grandfather. The princess appeared from the side. She sternly demanded that Mao not play any underhanded games. Mao jumped to her feet and angrily asked the princess, "Is she really scared?" Xiao sternly suggested to her rival to compete fairly. The main character was watching the girls from the side. The girls continued to quarrel. The situation became more and more tense. Lin Hu looked at them from the side, frightened. Zhang sat to the side with a cup in his hand. He happily watched the two girls quarrel. He decided that he would wait for Xiao. The prince watched everything that was happening from the side. He realized that Xiao was definitely not a lover for the princess. He should not have fallen for Chengzi's tricks. The girl ran up to the side of the table with a lot of treats where her brother was sitting. The prince glanced sideways at his sister. The girl looked down in front of her. Xiao silently grabbed the cup of drink and began to drain it to the bottom. The prince looked happily at his sister and told her with a smile not to be angry. The sister asked her brother Cheng Qian if he was ready to do everything for her. The prince promised the girl that he would always put her first. Yu smiled slyly at her brother and said that he should become emperor as soon as possible. Chen Qian told the girl that he agreed. Chen Qian, frightened and displeased, asked his sister what she wanted him to become. The princess stood next to her brother. She asked him sternly, does he agree to her proposal or not? The prince looked away sadly. He thought it was good that the emperor's father was not nearby. The boy whispered to his sister that their father, the emperor, was still on the throne. She shouldn't have said such words. Xiao explained to her relative that if she was extradited to a foreign country, they would never see each other again. The girl told her brother with great excitement that if she ended up in a foreign country, he would not be able to help her in any way. The prince thought about it and became frightened. He realized that the girl's words could be true. The girl told her brother that if the father emperor cancels the decree, it will be a blessing for everyone. The boy smiled happily at his sister and said that it was all true. Xiao looked carefully from the side and realized that the crown prince looked panicky. The princess was very calm. There was something wrong here. The boy turned around and told Master Beishuan that the princess must have some secret. Zhang told his partner in a thoughtful voice that the girl had complained to the crown prince about the protagonist's dirty deeds. Xiao was very surprised when he heard that the princess could complain to the crown prince about her lover. Zhang said in a stern voice that if the princess harbored a grudge against the protagonist, then they would have a chance. They would be able to get rid of Linghu. Xiao slyly gestured to his partner to speak more quietly. The banquet was full of ears. The prince thought to himself that the master had been acting very strange from the very beginning. A servant in dark clothes entered the room. He bowed silently to the prince and invited him to come with him. The prince stood up from his seat. He walked slowly after the servant. Xiao looked at his relative with displeasure as he headed for the exit. The banquet had just begun, and a secret report had already arrived. The man told the prince that he had heard the words that the second prince and his retinue had mentioned debauchery and were saying that they needed to be killed quickly. The master told his subordinate to take his seat quickly. The banquet was about to begin. The guy remembered all his meetings and conversations during the day. He did not understand what kind of performance was being played out around him. A servant appeared. He shouted in a loud voice that His Highness was arriving. The servants knelt down and greeted the emperor. The ruler sat on the throne. He told his subordinates to sit down quickly. The emperor showed his servants a young man. It was Prince Qi, who had come to strengthen the friendship between the countries. Qi smiled at the guests and conveyed greetings from the Emperor Qi. He wished for eternal friendship between the countries and unbreakable peace. The guests at the banquet began to raise their glasses and drink to the young Prince Qi. The guest grabbed the cup and drained it to the bottom. Slug came up from the side and poured him more drink. Qi looked at the princess and said that he wanted to raise the cup for her too. The girl carefully and excitedly took the cup from the guest's hands and prepared to drink. The princess, without wasting any time, drained the drink completely to the bottom. Xiao told her guest in a happy voice that she had already drunk her drink. Qi was disappointed. He was upset that the girl did not take the cup from his hands. The emperor looked at his daughter with displeasure. He didn't like that the girl was so impolite today. The ruler asked the guest with a smile if he had a lady love. Qi smiled at the man and said that he had a friend who his heart was set on. Qi turned around and looked at the princess carefully. Xiao felt scared. The girl was unhappy. She didn't like the way the prince looked at her. The emperor thought that if the marriage between his daughter and the princess took place, the northern border would be reliably fortified. The ruler told his guest that he could give his princess as a wife. Qi was very happy. Qi looked at the ruler very happily. He thanked the emperor. The girl on the side shouted that she did not agree. The prince turned away with displeasure. He could not understand how the girl dared to disobey the imperial decree. Xiao, after her refusal, looked ahead silently and thoughtfully. The main character stood next to his girlfriend. They waited to see what would happen next. The girl told the ruler from her place that she did not agree with such a marriage. Zhang was delighted. He thought from his place that he himself wanted to stop the wedding, but the girl got ahead of him. The ruler told the girl in a stern voice that she must state her arguments against the princess's marriage. Ma folded her hands. She told the emperor about the observations of their family fortune teller. The princess should not marry a foreigner. Xiao was very surprised when he heard the girl's words. He thought that she was reckless. Ma looked closely at the ruler. She anxiously asked him to think 3 times. Chang thought to himself with displeasure that he would still have to intervene. The main character realized with displeasure that she had heard his recent thoughts. Linhu had previously suggested that the girl make up a scary story for the emperor. The ruler might have believed it. The protagonist was displeased and surprised that she actually believed him. She took his thoughts seriously. Ma turned slyly and looked questioningly at her friend. She demanded that he give out more words in his thoughts. Linhu looked at his girlfriend with displeasure. He decided that she was scolding him in her thoughts. The ruler remembered to himself that the Mao family's fortune tellers were very skilled, but he had already given his word. The emperor told the girl that he could not take back the word he had given. The girl looked at the emperor with concern and advised him to think 3 times. After a short pause, the man confidently shouted that the matter was decided. The main character decided to take the floor. He told the emperor that he did not agree either. The emperor asked the boy with displeasure who he was. He didn't remember him. The main character gave his name to the ruler. He was invited to the palace banquet. The ruler asked the main character why he was against the princess's wedding. Zhang was unhappy that the protagonist got ahead of him. He slammed his hand on the table. The guy looked at the girl with excitement. He realized that he would never let her marry the prince. Zhang folded his hands in front of him. He told the ruler that the Long princess was seriously ill. She would not live long. The people in the hall fell silent after the main character's words. There was silence everywhere. The ruler asked the guy with displeasure, "Does he understand what he's saying?" The prince stood up. He told the emperor that he did not want to give him the tall princess in marriage. That is why this whole show was played out. The man told his guest that he was wrong. The emperor looked at the boy intently. He asked what had happened to him. The protagonist excitedly told the man that he had checked the princess's pulse. He advised the ruler to call the palace doctors to check. The prince was very scared when he realized that his sister was sick. Linhu could not understand when she could have been poisoned. She did not even take poison. Zhang came up to the side and whispered something to Xiao. The prince told the guy to leave for now. A master jumped out from the side. He shouted to the ruler that he had knowledge of medicine and could check the pulse of the Long princess. The master approached the table where the princess was sitting. He asked her for forgiveness. The prince did not understand what was happening and who was the director of today's performance. The girl extended her hand to Zhang and told him to watch carefully. The guy put his hand on the girl's hand. He began to carefully check her pulse. The master abruptly pulled his hand away from the girl. Xiao asked the guy in a frightened voice what had happened to her. The master told the emperor in a frightened voice that the Long princess would not last even a couple of days. The girl was very scared. Her frightened brother was next to her. The prince drew his sword. He shouted to the master that his sister was completely healthy and there was no hint of illness. Zhang told the emperor that he would not lie to him. He advised calling the palace physicians to check. The man told his daughter with concern that he could not marry her off to a foreign country when she was sick. The emperor shouted to his subordinates that he would reward whoever healed his princess. The main character looked ahead with joy. He realized that he had an opportunity. The princess was lying on her bed. Several doctors came up to her to examine her. The emperor was watching everything with great attention from the side. The healer placed his hand on the girl's pulse to check it. The old man said with concern that the princess's qi circulation was disrupted and her internal organs were damaged. They were powerless to do anything. The princess felt great. She didn't believe that she was dying. Xiao decided to herself that the main character had done something to her. The healer bowed to the emperor and said that they were unworthy of his mercy. The daughter called out to her father in a frightened voice. The emperor could not understand how this could be possible. The ruler shouted angrily and demanded that someone save his beloved daughter. The ruler pointed his finger at the master of medicine and demanded that Zhang give some explanation. The girl very angrily asked the guy if he could cure her. Zhang grabbed the protagonist by the hand. He accused the guy of deliberately hiding the princess's illness. The main character told the ruler with a smile that he had not slept a wink and was trying to find a cure for the princess. He found the divine recipe. It would take 49 days to prepare it. The master said in a cunning voice that it would be impossible to save the princess in 49 days. The guy thought to himself that if the girl died, he would be able to remove the main character. The protagonist said that the elixir takes 49 days to prepare, but it guarantees the princess's stable condition for 3 days. That's why he opposed the girl's marriage to the young prince of Qi. Zhang told the guy in a dissatisfied voice that he himself would soon die, and also said something about salvation. The ruler turned around and sternly asked the guy what other news he was reporting. Zhang said with a smile that he checked the main character's pulse today. The guy has no more than 3 days to live. Now Linghu wants to drag the princess into the afterlife with him. The main character remembered with displeasure that it was precisely because of the persistent girl Xiao that he came up with such a brilliant idea. Xiu looked at the guy carefully and realized that he was to blame for everything. In the end, she won't have to get married. The protagonist reminded the master about the bet. If Linhu did not die, he would dance naked near the city gates. Now the protagonist was going to save the princess. Suddenly, alarming system windows began to appear around the main character. He did not understand what was happening. The system informed the owner in a red window that an error was detected in the carrier. Bug fixing and destruction of abnormal data began. The main character looked in fear in front of him at the system window. He did not understand what was happening. The ruler from the side asked the guy with excitement what had happened to him. The main character answered the emperor that he was fine. The protagonist turned around and reminded the master that he had not yet answered his question. Zhang glared at his partner. He told him that he couldn't win. The master looked at the girl happily. He said that the princess would still be alive even without the main character's intervention. The protagonist realized with excitement that the changes in Zhang's body began after the system warning. This means that the master also received some kind of message. Ma whispered to the princess with great excitement that Zhang now had his own cheat code. The princess sat on the bed. She told her father to let all the people leave. She didn't want to allow any new bets between the protagonist and Zhang. The daughter told her father that a young prince of Qi had come to him from afar today for peace negotiations. The emperor told the girl that she was very wise. The ruler promised the boys that if any of them could cure the princess, they would receive any reward from him. The main character went outside. A girl ran up from the stairs behind him and asked with concern what had happened to him. Ma from behind I asked the guy why he was frowning since the morning. Linghu explained to his partner that the situation had changed. He wanted to try mental transmission. The main character telepathically told the girl that Zhang was acting strange. She received this message. Linghu told her friend in her mind that Zhang had received a cheat code and his behavior had changed. Mao felt it with fear. The main character grabbed the girl by the hand and wanted to take her to a secluded place to explain everything. She stood to the side and watched everything carefully. He didn't like the close communication between the main character and the girl. Xiao told his companion in a dissatisfied voice that Mao was, for some reason, very close to the main character. Zhang bowed to the prince. He promised that as long as he was here, his great work would go like clockwork. Zhang looked ahead angrily and silently. He was thinking intensely about something. The main character told the girl that he would now tell her who he really was. Mao was fully attentive. The main character told his girlfriend his story in detail in each of the scenarios. He played the role of the villain. He just needed to survive. She listened attentively and silently to her partner. She looked at him with interest. The main character was surprised that the girl had no reaction to his revelation. Mao slyly answered the guy that she already knew everything about him from his mental monologues. The main character grabbed the girl by the shoulders with his hands. He shouted at her that she was just a fictional character and not a real person. The girl looked at the main character and said that she understood her situation perfectly well, and it made no difference who she really was. Linhu was very surprised when he heard such an answer from his partner. He looked at her piercingly. Mao pointed her finger at the guy and said that he himself could be a character from another book. The main character excitedly told his partner that he had never considered such an option. The main character told the girl that when he was in the throne room, a problem began in the system. Zhang changed at that moment. It was then that he received special data, or power. The protagonist thoughtfully said that the plot could change very soon. Linhu argued with the master in the princess's bedroom that he would not cure him. Then he argued that the princess would become infected with the same disease. The plan was reliable, but now a backup plan was needed. The main character looked closely at his girlfriend. He didn't understand what had happened to her. "She is unhappy," she asked the guy. "Why did he end up in the princess's bedroom?" The protagonist turned to the side. He told his partner that he had fainted. The princess ordered him to be carried to her chambers. Mao sternly reminded her friend that he was wearing the princess's perfume. This meant that the fainting was a performance. Linhu excitedly explained to his girlfriend that he had indeed fainted. Then everything got out of control. Mao looked slyly at her friend. She asked him if he knew how to remove the smell of someone else's perfume from the body. The girl looked closely at the main character. She realized that he was confused. The girl grabbed the main character by the hand and wanted to take him away with her. The main character and his companion ran to her palace. He continued to justify himself to the girl on the go. Late in the evening, the main character and his girlfriend were sitting in the building of the consecrated palace. Linhu asked the girl if she would surrender herself. Mao replied to her friend that she gave up and he could let him go. She looked at the guy with displeasure and said that it was all a joke. He shouldn't have taken it seriously. The main character glanced slyly at the girl from the side. He accused her of interrupting an important conversation. Linhu extended his hand to his girlfriend and told her to come to him. Mao looked at the guy with interest and asked with excitement, "What else is he planning?" The main character explained to his partner that he is the villain in the script. If he called her, it means he wants to finish what he started. The guy grabbed the girl's hand. Mao asked excitedly, "Who is in his heart now?" The main character hugged the girl and pressed her to himself. He slyly told her that he had no need to choose. Mao shouted at the guy with displeasure that she was not the kind of girl who would agree to everything. The main character hugged the girl. He told her sternly that he was a real villain. Mao told the guy that even if he was a villain, he would belong only to her. The main character glanced at his girlfriend and slyly said that they would see if she could handle it. Linhu was with his girlfriend in the bedroom. Everything around was illuminated with a bright pink light. The next day, the princess went outside and looked for the main character. The servant explained to the lady that the guy was still resting. The girl approached the stairs and prepared to climb them. She was still looking for the guy. Xiao opened the door and ran into the house. She called the guy's name in fear.